Eastern England, a lot of low clouds, some light showers, and that fresh breeze noticeable overnight. In fact, temperatures in some sheltered parts of Scotland dipping well into the single figures overnight. We'll keep the warmth for Wales, west and south parts of England. So a warm start here first thing, temperatures rising through the morning, but not to the same degree as recent days. Northern Scotland keeps the cloud during the morning, further light showers coming in on that stiff breeze, but coming to the central belt, south and southwest of Scotland and much of Northern Ireland away from the north coast, and it's sunny skies once again. More extensive cloud for northern and eastern England. That's going to take a bit longer to lift and break through the morning compared with recent mornings, but plenty of sunshine for many parts of Wales, central southern and southwest England. In fact, it's towards the south and southwest where we'll see the best of the sunshine, also parts of central Scotland. Otherwise, a bit more cloud in the sky through the afternoon, certainly through the Midlands, parts of Wales, the east and north coast. And a cooler feel, that's the most notable thing. Rather than 30 Celsius, we'll see highs of 27 Celsius and more widely low to mid-20s. So more comfortable for sleeping this weekend. I think quite a chilly start in places on Sunday night, Sunday morning I should say, especially across parts of Scotland. Otherwise, actually less cloud around on Sunday, plenty of blue skies, dry for the vast majority. We keep the dry theme into next week. A bit of cloud around at times, but no discernible rainfall in the forecast.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Boxed Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
It's a Great British Giveaway Golden Summer Celebration. Your chance to win 2 fantastic prizes. There's an incredible £60,000 in tax-free cash. Plus, you'll also get your hands on a fine gold bar worth over £5,000. For a chance to win £60,000 in tax-free cash and a real gold bar, text GOLD to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entry start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB22 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 21st of August. This is a network giveaway. Entries will be pooled. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, because
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pearce.
And me, Miriam Cates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
I think GB News is completely unique in the way that we interact with our viewers.
Our audience aren't afraid to have their say. They want their voices heard now. and they've got a channel where that can happen.
I find more and more as I'm wandering around, people come up to me and they say, "We saw you on television." I say, "Oh yes, on what?" "On GB News."
Hello, are you the famous Sue? The whole crew with me here now. We came to celebrate.
It's our job to be the eyes and ears of the viewers.
They are part of the GBNews family, and I'm pleased to say it's a very large family.
And if people go to the time and trouble of listening and watching, then we've got to do a good job for them.
Well, I'm here right in the epicentre of the protest.
Here we go again.
You just tuned in. Where have you been?
It is raucous here tonight.
That's what makes us the fearless champion of Britain.
Live from London, England, this is GB News with the stories shaping Britain and America. Britain's ICE agents. The Home Office has conducted major raids on delivery depots in search of illegal workers. Are we finally following America's lead? Comrade Burnham, Britain's next Prime Minister, is promising the most left-wing government in 40 years. But will it be revolution or economic ruin? A GB News alert. The White House has finally spoken out about the Argentinian football team's Falklands stunt, and their response might just infuriate you. Sharia law travel. Police say an airline passenger invoked Sharia law during a seating dispute before assaulting a stewardess. Are Western values being destroyed for cultural accommodation? And get your tissues at the ready, ladies and gentlemen. The Duchess of Montecito, moaning Meghan, apparently felt unable to appear publicly during her UK visit. How will Britain ever recover from not seeing her? I'm Will Kingston, and this is The Late Show Live. Welcome to The Late Show Live, ladies and gentlemen, for another morning. Joining me this evening, or depending on where you are, wherever in the world you're watching, in London is my panel of Labor councillor Stuart Fawcett and Conservative councillor Elliot Keck. And in Washington is journalist and host of the Warwick Report, Jade Warwick, and former Chief of Staff to Marco Rubio, friend of the show, Matt Terrell. Thank you for joining me, one and all, for what will be a cracking 3 hours. Moving on to our main news this evening. Has Britain finally got a version of America's immigration raids and ICE agents? Because the Home Office is tonight touting that enforcement visits and arrests are at their highest ever level. It follows a major crackdown on illegal workers in the UK, which has seen 10 individuals arrested at 3 delivery depots across the country in the last week. In Croydon, 3 Brazilian nationals, 2 Pakistani nationals and an Indian national were arrested for various immigration offences. And in Crawley, 3 further arrests were made of a Gambian national, a Ghanaian national and a Pakistani national. All were overstayers. But despite these efforts, can the government really count this as a success? And what lessons does Britain still need to learn from America? With me now is former ICE agent and the president of Lionheart Protection Services, Tim Miller, and former FBI agent, James Hamilton. Gentlemen, thank you both for your time. Tim, I'll start with you. Can you give me the main lessons that need to be learned for the United Kingdom from the ICE raids that we've seen across the United States over the last 2 years?
Well, I think the obvious thing is try to stop it before it happens. We're in a crisis unlike you are because we had millions of undocumented people. And let me be clear, nobody in the U.S. is opposed to lawful immigration. We're a great nation because of that. But when you look at a lot of the source countries for people that flooded into our borders, Somalia, you look at Afghanistan, and the list goes on. They are not the ones we want walking through the front door. So there is a serious enforcement effort here led by President Trump. But when you're behind the curve, it's hard to get back in front of it. And I think Britain's starting to recognize that these people are not necessarily good for the culture of Britain.
I couldn't agree more. James, you'll have noted that there were 10 arrests that were made by immigration enforcement officials in the past week. Now, I'm not going to complain about that. I think that is good, but at the same time, it is a drop in the ocean when you think about the amount of people in this country who would be here illegally. How has the US successfully managed to scale up their operations to deal with, in that case, the millions of people in the United States who did not have a legal right to be in the country?
Well, hey, thanks for having me. 10 doesn't seem like a big number, but I guess you start somewhere. With regards to your point about America, yeah, certainly Trump's administration for the last 2 years has begun pretty intensive enforcement operations, but certainly we can all agree that every new president, we can't just change the strategy of the country just based on who's in office. So if you look at what happened under the last administration, you got 4 years of basically no enforcement, and now you have this very high enforcement tempo that the Trump administration is carrying out. And I don't think any country is served well by letting a bunch of people in and then going trying to figure out who they are and where they are and what they're doing here. It's completely backwards. We should do it on the front end versus trying to now go and try to find them. That just seems silly, but that's I think where both of our countries are right now.
That's, I think, a very important point, that really you need to get illegal and legal immigration policy right first, because it's much easier to stop bad actors from entering the country than it is to try and eradicate them, or I should say to remove them from the country after they've already arrived. Tim, there was initially very, very widespread popular support for deportations of illegals. That popular support waned somewhat when you started seeing particular optics coming in the media. So those 3 deaths of people as a result of confrontations with ICE agents was part of that. And you also see some footage which can be perceived as being brutal in the way that illegal migrants have been manhandled, for example, by ICE agents. How do you go about doing this in a way where you don't necessarily have those optics which can be taken by the left as a way of trying to argue against the principle of deportations themselves?
Yeah, I think that's a really important point, because most Americans believe in legal immigration into the U.S. I think the figure was 82%. But let me be clear, ICE agents aren't traffic cops. They're not riot police. During my career, if I had to make an arrest, I had the absolute support of local law enforcement. I'd been a police officer. We worked together, and we tried to do it in the safest possible way. Well, guess what? The left has taken a lot of the opportunities to make those arrests in a lawful way, in a safe place, away. And that's crippling ICE's ability to do their job well. And it's not their fault. They're in the middle of a propaganda war, quite frankly, that they shouldn't be. Let's be clear. They swore an oath to every day get up and support and defend the Constitution. They're trying to do that. And because of that, they're put in circumstances oftentimes that they simply cannot win. And to, the earlier point of, hey, we made this mess because of incredibly poor decisions not to secure our country. And now we're trying to clean it up. And unfortunately, ICE is caught in the middle.
And James, of course, you've also had Democratic governors who have actively tried to stymie ICE agents. What can be done at a federal level to make sure that there is cooperation with states that may not share the same political beliefs as Donald Trump?
Well, they can withhold monies. There's a lot of monies that the feds can withhold to states. But, this is all political. You're seeing it in, these states where governors and mayors, tell their officers you do not cooperate with ICE. And that really is not helpful for the rule of law. It just isn't. We have to all be willing to enforce the rule of law. But, to your point specifically about the left utilizing when bad things happen, I mean, this is dirty, hard business, okay? It's not, people don't want to be arrested, and it is difficult. And sometimes, things do happen. Certainly, we want to hold everyone accountable if something was done wrong. But at the end of the day, this is hard work. And, I think the option that the left might provide here is, well, just throw your hands up and do nothing. Well, certainly, we don't want to do that if we want to live in a society that is governed by the rule of law.
Tim, James, pleasure to speak to you. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Let's go to my panel now. I'll start in London with Stuart Fawcett and Elliot Keck. In fact, you know what? Let's get the whole team together. We'll also be joined by Washington, D.C. with Matt Terrell as well as Jade Warwick. Stuart, I'll start with you. I find it fascinating in the United Kingdom how quickly the Overton window has shifted. Deportations were a dirty word 18 months ago, 2 years ago, and now I think that has changed. Do you support widespread deportations of illegal migrants in this country?
I think if people have entered the country illegally, they should be prepared to face the consequences of that. And that's what's currently happening, as you've seen today with the action that's been taken on illegal workers. And by the way, this isn't the first day that this is happening. It's been the largest ever crackdown since Shabana Mahmood took over as Home Secretary. And that's continued pretty much consistently ever since then. This is just another case of it. What's a really important measure as well, and I think it needs to be noted, is about the types of immigration. Your two colleagues there mentioned it previously, which is, you know, there are positive methods of immigration to a country. However, if you come here illegally, there's going to be consequences. Now, the issue at the moment is that we have very, very narrow, safe routes. And we do, you know, we have a responsibility as a civilized nation to have a working asylum and refugee system, as we have done, you know, since the Second World War. But that can't be abused. And alongside that, there needs to be the consequences of what happens if you come here illegally.
Yeah. Elliot, the problem that I think many people will be thinking is even if you do arrest these particular people, even if you do have immigration enforcement officials who can locate them, pick them up, you then have this tangled human rights framework which they can then rely on to then frustrate the process of deportations. Surely this is only part of the process, and the bigger question has to be, how do you untangle that legal web?
Yeah, completely. And listen, that's why Kemi Badenoch has made one of our absolute core policy platforms, leaving the ECHR, European Convention on Human Rights, and it is the European Convention on Human Rights that makes the deportation of illegal immigrants so difficult, particularly Articles 3 and 8. But to go back to something that I think was Tim made the point that you don't want to start from this point. You don't want to start from the point where you're having to remove people, because removing people from a country is an extremely difficult, unpleasant process, and it's something we shouldn't want to have to do. So it is about stopping people at source, stopping people before they come in, and as a result of that, we need to be looking at the broad range of incentives. The simple reality is here, United Kingdom, once you're here, if you stay for 5 years and you get indefinite leave to remain, you basically get unlimited access to one of the most extraordinarily generous benefits and healthcare systems anywhere in the world, and that is a massive pull factor for people that frankly aren't that interested in working, aren't that interested in contributing. No, they just need to do their 5 years and they can put their feet up for the rest of their life. So this needs a systemic response that looks at every different element of this problem and doesn't just think about the people that need to be removed and need to be removed by force.
Yeah, Jade, what are your reflections both on this story as well as the American experience of deportations over the last couple of years?
My personal opinion is that the United Kingdom should fly over Gregory Bavino and have him handle everything, because he was extremely hardcore and, the buck really stopped with him. If you hinder deportations of criminals, you are just telling us how much you hate the public, you hate British people, because they just want to be safe. They want to walk home and feel safe and not be passing criminals in the streets who are going to knife them.
Yeah, I agree with that. Matt, the question which comes to mind for me when we look at this is, how do you actually scale these operations? Because again, we saw that number, 10 people picked up, and that was worthy of a press release. Again, great, it's a good start, and there has been further deep work done by immigration enforcement in this country, but it is a drop in the ocean. And again, in America, you have millions that need to go. How do you go about actually scaling up this process so you're not just basically picking off people one by one?
Yeah, absolutely. Great point, Will. And you do it by having a leader who's willing to do it. Fine, you picked up 10 people here, but when you have over 70,000 people in the UK who've come over since Keir Starmer's been in office illegally through small boat crossings, 10 is not even a dent. It's not even a drop in the bucket. So you have to not do this from a place of the government just doing this for optics, which I'm not saying it's what they're doing here, but some would argue it's what they're doing because the voters are demanding it, the people in the UK are demanding it, but you have to scale it. And the way you scale it is with politicians like we have here in the United States, with President Trump choosing to scale it and put in place the necessary folks on the ground, ICE, throughout the country, to go in and deport people who are here illegally. And President Trump has faced backlash from Democrats. He's been called a fascist over it. You've seen ICE agents here in the United States attacked by left-wing lunatics. You have to be able to say, you know what, we're going to put the country first. And the UK and the US, that means putting your citizens first. And if you're in the country illegally, deporting people from the country. But you have to go beyond that. You have to secure the border, but also for those employers out there who knowingly employ those who are illegal immigrants, they need to be held accountable as well. You have to take apart the magnets that allow illegal immigrants to come into a country. It's a multi-part approach, but I absolutely think that the UK should follow what the United States has done, have ICE secure your border, and have a leader who enforce it day in and day out.
Yeah, I think that point around employers is key, particularly in the gig economy. At the moment, from what I can see, that you get handed heavy fines if you're found to be employing people who do not have a legal right to work in the country. I think it needs to go beyond that. I think if you give it, say, 3 strikes and you're out policy, if you're caught 3 times with workers who don't have a right to be here, you no longer have a right to run your business in this country. And you see how quickly then that this would be sorted out. Jade, a quick final question to you. I think getting rid of people who don't have a right to be here is a no-brainer. I think there is a more difficult conversation in the United Kingdom, which is over the last 20 years at least, the country has brought in thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people who despise the country, its values, its history, and who are not compatible with the British way of life. Some people are suggesting that some form of remigration, for example, voluntary remigration measures, which may include taxing remittances as an incentive to see remigration occur. Do you think that's something that British governments need to consider?
It's potentially an option. Remigration and repatriation are 2 very important aspects to this. There needs to be some level of fear in the back of their minds, where every day when they go out, they don't want to get caught by the police because maybe someone will ask, are you here legally? How long have you been here illegally? And there needs to be more incentives for them to leave. So there's a multi-step process that will be needed. But yes, like they said, a strong leader needs to be in that position.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I was about to say on the topic of a strong leader, but I'm far from sold on that yet. We will be discussing the Burnham government, or impending Burnham government, shortly. Still ahead on the Late Show Live. In addition to that, the White House has finally spoken out about the Argentinian football team's Falklands stunt, and their response, I suspect, will infuriate you. But first tonight. Lord, give me strength. And give me strength for the strikes and blackouts that are inevitable to follow, because Andy Burnham, your next Prime Minister, wants to take us all back to 1970. This is The Late Show Live on the People's Channel, GBNews.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point.
Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
From cold mornings
to warm family brunches,
from football to tennis, in the car,
in the kitchen,
GB News Breakfast is there with the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again to start your day just right.
GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Some people enjoy lazy Sunday mornings, but not me.
What's the truth of the matter?
So that's a very live question.
Would you support him if he waters down these plans?
Before the spin sets in,
I'll be getting to the truth.
This is personal.
No soft questions, no easy answers.
It's one thing if the state has rules in this country. It's another thing whether the police and others actually police them.
Setting the agenda and holding those in power to account.
You can't really blame her if the system is set up this way.
You will not want to miss it, trust me. The Camilla Tominey Show, Sundays from 9:30, only on GB News.
Here at GB News, we made a promise to tell your stories.
And on the 6th of August, we're marking 5 years of doing exactly that.
Celebrate with us by having your say. Join in the debates live on TV and radio.
And meeting your favourite presenters across the country, from Leeds to Aberdeen, from Belfast to Barry Island.
Plus, join me in Essex for our biggest live show of the year. Scan the QR code or visit gbnews.com/celebrate. Terms and conditions apply.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I ever got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We've identified 250,000 non-citizens registered to vote in just 4 states.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. I'm Will Kingston. Even more bombshells have emerged following the President's emergency address to the nation on alleged election interference last night. I'll bring you the latest developments on that shortly. But first, buckle up, ladies and gentlemen, because we're returning to the 70s. Andy Burnham has begun his leadership of the Labor Party by setting out his vision for Britain's future in a major keynote speech. And guess who he said was to blame for all of our problems?
Britain took a series of wrong turns in the 1980s. Political power was centralised and economic power was privatised. The country surrendered control of the essentials: housing, water, energy, transport, and left people exposed to higher costs. That in turn led to the concentration of more wealth and power in the hands of fewer people and fewer places.
With me now is former national newspaper editor David Wooding. David, great to see you once again. What did you make of Andy Burnham's speech?
Well, once again, it was high on vibes and a little bit low on detail. The main thrust of what he had to say was, as you rightly point out, wanting to take us back 40 years or more. I find it a bit odd, to be honest, that he was blaming effectively Margaret Thatcher for everything. As she left power 36 years ago, and he had very little to say about the grave mistakes of the last 2 years, or indeed the last decade, by successive governments. To heap it all on Margaret Thatcher would be a bit like perhaps Tony Blair blaming Harold Macmillan for the problems when he came to power in 1997.
But it is also just factually inaccurate. So I guess what he's trying to say is that neoliberalism, which is one of those words the left uses like fascism, which I don't think they really understand, but neoliberalism is to blame for the country's ills, and yet the tax burden in this country has never been greater since the Second World War. I would suggest the economy has never been more regulated. The size of the state has never been bigger. If this is neoliberalism, I'd be really, really kind of scared of what, full-blown open market capitalism looks like.
Absolutely, and he talks about the centralisation of power. A lot of the problems in this country is that governments have given power away. OK, some of it's been taken back from the European Union, but so much has been devolved to quangos and groups of advisors and autocrats outside of Westminster that the government hasn't really got a grip on anything. We see it with the courts. The courts seem to be dictating so much of the policy rather than the legislature these days.
How long do you think he can coast on effectively vibes? Because this is what this speech was all about. It was about feel-good vibes as opposed to policy substance. When does the rubber hit the road and he has to actually start delivering some difficult decisions?
Well, I think he's in for a bit of a rude awakening on Monday, because all the hundreds of MPs who backed him, the Labour MPs, I think there's only about 50 MPs, 54 perhaps, who did not nominate him for the leadership. They'll all be queuing up not only for jobs in his government, but with problems that need solving. He'll notice that every minute of every day there'll be somebody putting a memo in his in-tray saying this needs sorting out, and he's going to be hit hard with all the realities of becoming Prime Minister. And he'll realise that he can't just flash his eyelashes and give us that lovely smile and do it all on personality. There's a lot that's going to have to happen. And the decisions we don't know anything about, which he's going to have to take, his policy, he's going to have to come clean on all this. He said today, in fact, he hasn't actually decided who's going to be in his cabinet. It's 48 hours before he's going to have to make that decision. So either he's fibbing to us or he's been a bit foolish by not having his cabinet sorted out.
I just find it staggering, given the fundamental flaw of the Starmer Prime Ministership is that it looks like they didn't have a plan after 14 years in opposition, and yet here we are now with a new Prime Minister who seemingly doesn't have a substantive, coherent plan, both in terms of policy or personnel. Anyway, David, great to speak to you as always.
Pleasure.
Well, this is, in my view, vague, vacuous vibes, ladies and gentlemen. I think there is a lot that is similar to the Kamala Harris attempt at the White House, where, again, a toxic leader was ditched in favour of someone who was meant to be more personable, who was meant to be a breath of fresh air, was meant to provide a feel-good factor. But just like with Harris, I suspect that you can only coast on vibes for so long. Let's go to the panel now. Elliot, I'll start with you. I heard a fascinating little line from friend of the show, well, friend of the channel, Jacob Rees-Mogg, today on a podcast, where he said there's a really simple test for whether or not there is substance or BS to a political plan. Oh, that's my Australian way of phrasing it. I think Jacob was a bit more nuanced in the way he put it. But he basically said, if there isn't a clear, substantive argument against a particular line, then you know it's waffly nothingness. Now, listen to this. Number one, we want to unite Labor. Well, again, who would want to divide their own party? So that's useless. Make political discourse less toxic. Well, yeah, no one wants to make political discourse more toxic, so let's just call that, again, feel-good nothingness. Be distinctively Labor. Well, yeah, I guess if you're a Labor politician, of course that's what you want to be. Be a leader for the North, the South, the East and the West. Well, of course every Prime Minister is going to say they're going to govern for everyone and not for a particular group. And then the final one was take power away from Westminster. Maybe that's the only one where there is actually any sort of strategic coherence to it. But these are all just platitudes. There's no substance to any of this.
Well, it sounds like you're not completely sold.
If someone needs to, we'll get Elliot to provide some. We'll get Stuart to provide some.
He's agnostic. Listen, as far as I can tell, the one policy that Andy Burnham has is that he should be Prime Minister. And it's really depressing the way that he characterises easily the most successful decade in terms of economic growth, in terms of productivity gains, in terms of health improvements since the Second World War, and arguably the most successful since the beginning of the 20th century. I mean, we're talking about a decade of the 1980s where real GDP grew by a third, where the number of days lost to strikes fell by 90%, infant mortality dropped by 40%, the economy went absolutely skyrocketing. Now, was growth even? Of course it wasn't even. Growth is never even. That is the nature of economic growth. You get some parts that surge and some parts that struggle. But the alternative, and what we have seen over the last, not just the last couple of years, let's be honest, let's go back a bit further, is that yes, maybe we haven't had that uneven growth that we saw in the 1980s. What we've had instead is no growth whatsoever. So I'd like to see another 1980s, and I think most of the public would.
Wealth inequality pretty much hasn't changed in this country since the 1980s. So this whole argument that you get from the Gary Stevensons of this world, that wealth inequality is, is getting ever worse, just isn't true.
Yeah, and the top 1% used to pay 10% of income tax. The top 1% now pay 30% of income tax, and that is because we cut the top rate of income tax from 83% to 40%. It's now back to 45%. But
Stuart, on income tax, in 1972, the top rate of income tax was 90%, and then if that income was from investments, the effective top tax rate was 98%. Why would you even bother? Why on earth would you want to go back to the dumpster fire that was 1970s Britain?
Well, imagine how shocked Margaret Thatcher would be when she realised that 14 years of Conservative governments led us to the highest tax burden in history, you know. And I think this is the issue that Andy Burnham here is outlining. Let's just remember, today he became leader of the Labour Party. His speech was as leader of the Labour Party. On Monday he becomes the Prime Minister and he will announce his team that's going to execute his vision. I think it's important to state as well that he's been clear that he's not going to deviate from the manifesto, that's the democratic mandate, but improve the circumstances and culture in how that is delivered. And I think that's a major element and something that there was clearly issues with as part of Keir Starmer's administration. But in terms of applying governance more fairly across the UK, I think he's clearly speaking from a point of view of someone who's been a Metro Mayor for a long time, and his agenda is to extend devolution so that all parts of the UK can have more equal opportunity.
But Jade, here's the thing about being a Metro Mayor is that basically you just get given a cheque from Westminster and then you get the fun job of just spending money. You don't actually have to really make hard decisions around, say, cutting spending or how do you actually raise revenue effectively, which requires to consider winners and losers. I don't know, do you have more faith in what Burnham may be able to offer than I do?
No, not at all. Just remember that Andy Pandy was the mayor of Greater Manchester, which covers 10 boroughs, and he wants to send us back into the dark ages because he is such a strong supporter of Islam and mass migration. In fact, he's condemned Islamophobia multiple times and said that it's dangerous for the country. I don't think that he puts Britain first at all. And he's just a continuation of Keir Starmer and the Labour Party.
Matt, he's got this space to operate here because there is the growing mistrust, particularly on the left, but I would suggest on elements of the right now, about free markets. You would see that some, like the MAGA movement, is far less about free markets and capitalism than, say, Reagan was, for example. How do you make the argument for free markets and for growth better so that you don't have crackpot leftists come in and try and just raise taxes constantly and constantly?
By talking about how the free market works, because it does. When capitalism has the freedom to operate, it works. And look, talk about Margaret Thatcher. She stood for many things. She stood for capitalism. She stood for economic freedom, freedom in general. But she also stood against one critical thing, and that was socialism. And many people have many concerns with how Andy Burnham will govern. Is he going to govern like Mamdani out of New York, who's a socialist, I would argue a communist? Or will he govern like President Trump, who's been a defender of capitalism? Under President Trump, you've seen capitalism thrive. You've seen record highs in the stock market. You've seen job growth. You've seen low inflation. Those are things that work for the American people. You also see President Trump lower taxes across the board, not just for the wealthy, but for those who are in industries like restaurants making tips with no tax on tips. He's done it for those who don't get income and are retirees with no tax on Social Security. So you have to, I think, follow the Trump model, which is have an economic agenda that works for all Americans, and that's what you need in the UK. An economic agenda that works for everybody. But here's what we know doesn't work. High taxes, trying to redistribute the wealth, and choosing to put more power in the government than you do in the people of the UK. And speaking to that point, Andy Burnham was not elected. Margaret Thatcher was multiple times. Andy Burnham does not have a mandate. Margaret Thatcher did. President Trump did, because they won national elections. Putting power back to the people means they should have elections. I think it was a mistake for Andy Burnham not to proceed forward with an election. Obviously, we'll see what happens in terms of how he governs, but many people are concerned about how he will govern. Will he govern as a socialist, communist, or will he govern like Margaret Thatcher and President Trump and defend capitalism and champion capitalism?
I think most people watching and listening know the answer to that, unfortunately. Let's take a quick look at some of the other main news in America. Fast food chain Taco Bell is removing lettuce from its menu in some states after investigations found it could be linked to an outbreak of explosive diarrhea caused by the parasite. The decision is said to have been taken out of an abundance of caution following discussions with health officials. From reporting on this the other night, I recall 80 hospitalisations as a result of diarrhea. That is pretty nasty. Elsewhere, President Trump has blamed Canada for wildfire smoke that could impact the World Cup final. White House officials are meeting with FIFA President Gianni Infantino ahead of Sunday's final to discuss the potential health dangers posed by wildfire smoke in the New York and New Jersey areas. And finally, Oscar-winning Irish actress Brenda Fricker, whose decades-long career included an Academy Award-winning performance in My Left Foot and a memorable, much-loved role in Home Alone 2, Lost in New York, has died aged 81 following a period of declining health. Strength and love to her family and friends. Still ahead on The Late Show Live.
I'm not looking to get into lawsuits, but I think I have an obligation to do it. This was so egregious.
There's been a major development in the President's lawsuit against the BBC, and it could leave the corporation looking more vulnerable than ever. But first tonight, the White House has finally spoken out about the Argentinian football team's Falklands stunt. You don't want to miss what they had to say. This is The Late Show Live on the People's Channel, GB News.
Some people enjoy lazy Sunday mornings, but not me.
What's the truth of the matter?
So that's a very live question.
Would you support him if he waters down these plans?
Before the spin sets in, I'll be getting to the truth.
This is personal.
No soft questions, no easy answers.
It's one thing if the state has rules in this country. It's another thing whether the police and others actually police them.
Setting the agenda and holding those in power to account.
You can't really blame her if the system is set up this way. You will not want to miss it, trust me.
The Camilla Tominey Show, Sundays from 9:30, only on GB News.
Breaking news, live updates, stories that matter.
From the heart of the GB newsroom to every corner of Britain, with our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
GB News bulletins are there to deliver the latest news that matters to you.
Bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because
the failure is
you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back,
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
and we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, has Trump made a good start? No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I ever got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I've been in Westminster for a long time, but I know that though power may be here, its effect on people's lives is across the whole of the country. We may be where rules are made, but it's where they're implemented that matters. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for forthright and frank discussion on where Britain has come from, where it's going, and where it will end up. That's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Vox Populi, Vox Dei.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. I'm Will Kingston. Still ahead, police say an airline passenger invoked Sharia law during a seating dispute before assaulting a female flight attendant. Our Western values being destroyed for cultural accommodation. I think you know my answer to that, but we will nonetheless debate it in the next hour. But first, the White House has defended Argentina after players, including Lionel Messi, held a flag displaying the words, The Falklands are Argentinian after their win against England at the World Cup. The White House says the players were exercising a First Amendment right to freedom of expression.
Messi is one of the greatest of all time. And in terms of the ability, the opportunity to be able to make, those statements, they have the ability to do that in the United States of America.
FIFA has previously banned Spanish players from claiming Gibraltar was theirs and fined British teams for wearing a poppy. Meanwhile, Argentine President Javier Milei has also written on X, while some are busy throwing tantrums befitting a terminally mononeuronal teenager. So through the diplomatic route, we are getting closer every day to the recovery of Las Malvinas. Well, that's certainly not a laughing matter, despite the way that he has phrased it. Joining me now, my panel, Labor councillor Stuart Fawcett and Conservative councillor Elliot Keck. And in Washington, we have Jade Warwick and Matt Terrell. Matt, I'll start with you. Whilst no one is more envious of the First Amendment than I am, I would have liked to have heard a but following that, which is but, of course, we stand with the United Kingdom and this claim from Argentina is clearly nonsense. And it's the fact we didn't get that second bit, which really annoyed me.
Yeah, well, Secretary Rubio weighed in on this just a few weeks ago and did underline that the Trump administration is standing by the long-standing policy of the United States that's essentially be neutral on this issue. I have to say, though, I'm just speculating here. I just think part of this, yes, is absolutely the United States standing for freedom of speech. The United States continuing to stand by the long-standing policy on this issue. But at the same time, I also think this is President Trump just being ticked off, frankly, with Spain. President Trump has gone after Spain, rightfully so in my opinion, for not doing enough on defense spending, gone after Spain just recently in terms of not doing enough to help us with the Iran conflict, blocking us from using their airspace. So I think part of this is a little bit of that getting in the mix. No question, I think Secretary Rubio and the administration did the right thing by coming out just a few weeks ago and standing by the policy on this that's been long-standing by the United States. But obviously you understand this is an important issue to the people of the UK. No question about that.
Elliot, I don't mind a policy of strategic ambiguity if it involves, say, China and Taiwan, but a policy of strategic ambiguity when you have one country which is supposedly meant to have a special relationship with you, and then the Argentines, I think, is a completely different kettle of fish. I think this is hugely disappointing from the United States.
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about the good bits about Trump with his economic agenda and some of the stuff he's doing on immigration. I mean, this is absolutely the worst bit of Trump. And I think we should put to bed this freedom of speech argument. There is no freedom of speech discussion here. Nobody's talking about whether or not the Argentinian players should be allowed to hold this view and profess this view through social media or wherever they want to. What we're talking about is whether or not they should be allowed to do it during a football match where the rules are prescribed by a private organisation, FIFA, that is allowed to set those rules and dictate those rules. And they dictate those rules very, very clearly. And let's just cast our mind back to when some NFL players took the knee during the US national anthem. Donald Trump called those players to be removed from the country. So Donald Trump has been very, very clear about what he thinks about the politicisation of sports events. And I actually think the president was right about criticising people for politicising those events. This is not a freedom of speech issue. If Lionel Messi and co want to go onto social media and all talk about Las Malvinas, they are more than welcome to, and it's their freedom of speech to do so. But at the end of a football game dictated by a private company with its own rules, it was disgraceful.
Stuart, I want to give you Milei's comment once again, mainly because I want to reread that particular phrase that he used. While some are busy throwing tantrums befitting a terminally mononeuronal teenager, through the diplomatic route, we are getting closer every day to the recovery of Las Malvinas. What do you make of that?
You know, as I speak as a former naval officer, and the Falklands War looms large within the naval service family and the effects of it. And I think we've got to be very clear. This was a war that caused casualties on both sides. And the Argentinian regime that waged this war was particularly awful to the Argentinian people. It conscripted soldiers and sent them there in awful conditions. And let's look at the context of it now in the modern day. As Elliot says, I signed a blank cheque to fight for freedom of speech, and I believe in it. However, these footballers have signed part of the rules. And to me, part of being English is following the rules and respecting them. And the rules of sport and world-class football are that you don't try and forward political agendas because we're there for the game. And I think doing this betrays the memory and sacrifice of those on both sides who lost and who suffered, lost through that war and who died, because it's essentially saying that they almost died in vain, because that's now being disregarded. So I think this needs to be put to bed now. It doesn't have a place in sport. They can have their freedom of speech, certainly, but within the confines of that game, I think we should respect the memory of those people who have lost their lives and respect the fact that people have had self-determination in this issue, and they very much want to be British. And it's a separate issue to winning a football match. And I think that's what from the game we experienced and the statement after, this is a lesson in how we respect the rules and how we respect each other. And, you know, it's no secret I'm a bit of a, you know, part of the Marco Rubio fan club, and we would very much like to move that position from neutrality to one of support in the future.
Mate, be careful, they'll kick you out of the Lefties Alliance. Jade, I think that this should, to use Stuart's term, be put to bed for an even more simple reason, and that is there was a war that was fought, they lost, stop whinging, move on. Why can't more people just accept that fact?
I'm not sure about that, but that's just classic football behaviour. And, you know, these players like to antagonise the crowd and everyone watching for views. And, I mean, that's what we do on social media all the time as well. And I just want to say to one of your panellists that there is a big difference between a visitor from Argentina coming over and making a political statement and one of your own citizens taking the knee and not respecting the flag and the anthem.
Well, hold on, we weren't allowed to wear poppies during a game, I think it was against Spain. I mean, England players weren't allowed to wear poppies on their kits. I mean, if the poppy is a political statement, then talking about the sovereignty of a sovereign territory. But listen, I mean, the principle should still be the same. Either you allow political statements in sport or you don't allow political statements in sport. It should be one or the other.
I think that's right. I think
I agree with you on that.
There's two things going on here. There is the response from the American government, and then there are the inconsistency of FIFA in not sanctioning this whilst they sanction other political expressions. Now, look, FIFA's reputation is now well and truly in the mud. If you're looking for logical consistency and integrity from FIFA, you are certainly looking in the wrong place. But I also think here that I think it is disappointing, this ambiguous attitude of the United States on this on this territorial dispute. The fact the Argentinian dispute is ahistorical nonsense, and it's also whinging after they very well and truly got their backsides handed to them in the Falklands conflict. I think that should be the end of the matter, but unfortunately I think they'll keep whinging. In any case, still ahead on The Late Show Live, President Trump praises Texas for putting Christianity back into public schools, but Jewish leaders are warning it could fuel anti-Semitism. Do you support mandatory Bible study? But also on the show tonight,
mass migration isn't some fringe concern of little consequence.
the US Department is reportedly preparing to give a major grant to British Conservatives. I'll reveal why in a moment. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News.
Breaking news, live updates, stories that matter.
From the heart of the GB newsroom to every corner of Britain, with our team of dedicated journalists across the UK.
GB News bulletins are there to deliver the latest news that matters to you.
Bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From court mornings
to warm family brunches.
From football to tennis in the car.
In the kitchen.
GB News breakfast is there.
With the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again.
To start your day just right. GB News breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community.
So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's political podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's political podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
Because you're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. I'm Will Kingston. Still ahead, there's been a major development in the President's $10 billion lawsuit against the BBC, and it could leave the corporation looking more vulnerable than ever. There's a bit of Dr. Evil in that. $10 billion. First, let's delve into some of the main stories on the front of tomorrow's newspapers. And starting with, perhaps a tad unusually, The Guardian, which is reporting that Donald Trump's State Department intends to allocate $12 million to organisations in the UK. The grants revealed in US government documents are part of a package of support for European groups viewed favourably by the Trump administration. Elliot, I'll go to you first on this one. I have mixed feelings. So part of me, and I know, for example, that one of the groups is the Free Speech Union, which I am a member of. I think they do absolutely wonderful work in the UK, led by Toby Young. And the more money that goes to them, the better. At the same time, if this was, for example, a Biden administration giving money to Hope Not Hate, I don't imagine I would be as charitable or as favourable in my perspective. So I am torn. What do you make of it?
Yeah, listen, I think I agree. I don't really like to see governments give money to any think tanks or campaign groups or advocacy groups. It's one thing if a government is giving money to a charity specifically to deliver a service, but the reality is government funnels money to left-wing charities all the times, and what that charity ends up doing is with the money essentially is using it to lobby the government for different policies. And I mean, listen, let's just look at one recent example. So Save the Children, a formerly august and respected charity, gets millions of pounds from the Treasury, from the UK taxpayer, and just in the last couple of days published a statement on social media basically saying that the genocide, so-called genocide in Gaza, is on Keir Starmer's hands, having taken millions of pounds from his government. So I don't really like the use of taxpayers' money for campaign groups, advocacy groups, even when they are extremely worthwhile, and I certainly agree with you, Will. I mean, the Free Speech Union is as worthwhile as it gets, but listen, I would like to see government stop doing this and focus on using taxpayer money for services.
Matt, are you comfortable with US taxpayer dollars going towards European NGOs?
I am. I think right now what President Trump recognizes is that many of the challenges we face here in the United States, such as the rise of socialism and communism by the left, the violence from the left, that's not just an issue that is taking shape in the United States, but taking place around the world, taking place in countries like the UK. So if the United States under President Trump needs to make targeted investments to counter the rise in left-wing violence or counter what we're seeing in terms of the rise of communism and socialism, then I'm all for those kind of investments. And we've seen in the United States is the left make investments and take over institutions. For example, the Smithsonian, our museum system here in Washington, D.C. We've seen the left that has put in place, education as it relates to far left missions, whether it's transgender issues or whether it's, issues related to immigration. There are certain places where this stuff doesn't belong, but there's third-party nonprofits or NGOs. I'm all for the United States making targeted investments that will help strengthen the United States, strengthen the UK, and strengthen the world.
Elliot, quick thought from you.
Oh, listen, the problem is that once you legitimise one side doing it, then the other side can say we're going to do the same thing. And they think that their good causes are just as good as we think. So listen, as I said, I think this stuff has no place in government spending. I'd like to see government money going towards delivering vital services for people.
And Stuart?
Look, I think the important thing is that political party donations are regulated and that we protect the integrity, that political parties in the UK can't be influenced by money from outside of it. But I think we're missing a little bit of a highlight of this funding. I think we need to look at it in a phase. I know, Matt, you've mentioned about the threat from the left, socialism, communism, but I think it's actually a broader, more fundamental spectrum than that.
Can I suggest that we cover that broader and more fundamental spectrum in the next hour?
Don't you worry, I won't let you down.
Of time. And Stuart and Jade, I will go to you at the top of the next hour. We do have a lot more coming up then, ladies and gentlemen, including this.
We've identified 250,000 non-citizens registered to vote in just 4 states.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Another fine day, by and large, a little bit less hot than recent days. A pleasant summer's day for most. There is the chance of seeing a shower, but if you're after rain, well, I'm afraid to say that most places won't see any all weekend. The odd shower across the east of England with thicker cloud here. And inland, we'll see a bit more cloud today over northern England, Wales, parts of the Midlands, and here again too, 1 or 2 isolated but potentially heavy showers could develop. Most places fine and bright with sunny spells. Not as hot across the south, but we still get up to 24, 25 degrees. So still feeling pretty warm in that sunshine. Always a little cooler along some of these North Sea coasts with the breeze coming in. Continuing to feed in some cloud at times for Lincolnshire and East Anglia. A greater chance through the late afternoon and evening of the odd shower over South Wales and South West England, but they will be very hit and miss. But if we do see one, could be quite a potent downpour. Most of Northern Ireland, most of Scotland having a pretty pleasant summer's evening with a bit of a brisk northerly breeze across the far north, keeping temperatures a little lower here. Temperatures will dip away quite a bit on Saturday evening, so bear that in mind if you are heading out this evening. It will turn quite fresh quite quickly under largely clear skies. Still a bit of a northerly breeze blowing along the east coast, maybe some thicker cloud heading towards the northwest of Scotland, but generally clear skies and those temperatures quite a bit lower than they have been over recent nights. Towns and cities in the north dropping down to 10 or 11 Celsius, but rural spots will be well below that, so well down into single figures. Sunday's another fine day by and large. Yes, a fresh start, but then sunny spells for most, a bit more cloud in the east again, 1 or 2 showers over northern Scotland perhaps, but generally the wind's light, plenty of sunny spells, and after that coolish start, temperatures in the afternoon for most places getting back into the 20s, mid-20s across the south. Bye for now.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
From cold mornings
to warm family brunches.
From football to tennis. In the car.
In the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there.
with the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it?
We're here again to start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Okoye, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Some people enjoy lazy Sunday mornings, but not me.
What's the truth of the matter?
So that's a very live question.
Would you support him if he waters down these plans?
Before the spin sets in,
I'll be getting to the truth.
This is personal.
No soft questions, no easy answers.
It's one thing if the state has rules in this country. It's another thing whether the police and others actually police them.
Setting the agenda and holding those in power to account. You can't really blame her if the system is set up this way. You will not want to miss it, trust me. The Camilla Tominey Show, Sundays from 9:30, only on GB News.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Tom Harwood. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Live from London, England, this is GB News with the stories shaping Britain and America. Comrade Burnham, Britain's next Prime Minister, is promising the most left-wing government in 40 years. But will it be revolution or economic ruin? Give me strength. In other news, Trump's China claims after last night's major address to the nation, where it was alleged China stole millions of Americans' voter files, the Department of Homeland Security has also spoken out tonight, making this claim.
We've identified 250,000 non-citizens registered to vote in just 4 states.
Elsewhere, and this is shocking, police say an airline passenger invoked Sharia law during a seating dispute before assaulting a stewardess. Are Western values being destroyed for cultural accommodation? And Trump's $10 billion lawsuit. There's been a major development in the president's lawsuit against the BBC, and it could leave the corporation looking more vulnerable than ever.
I'm not looking to get into lawsuits, but I think I have an obligation to do it. This was so egregious.
And more migrant money. The Home Office wrongly refunded migrants £19 million. And just wait until I tell you the best part about this story. You just won't believe it. And get your tissues at the ready. The Duchess of Montecito, moaning Meghan, apparently felt unable to appear publicly during her UK visit. Pass me the world's smallest violin. How indeed will Britain ever recover from not seeing her? Well, I'm Will Kingston, and this is The Late Show Live. Welcome back to The Late Show Live, ladies and gentlemen, for a second hour. Thank you so much for staying with us. And thank you to my panel as well for persisting. We have in London with Labor councillor Stuart Fawcett and Conservative councillor Elliot Keck. And in Washington, D.C., journalist and host of The Warwick Report, Jade Warwick, and former Chief of Staff DeMarco Rubio, Matt Terrell. Thank you for joining me once again, one and all. Let's move to the main news at the top of this hour, and that goes to the major speech delivered last night by US President Donald Trump, who claimed China interfered in the 2020 presidential election.
First, they show that over a period of years, starting during the 2020 election cycle, the People's Republic of China carried out what is believed to be the largest compromise of election data in history, resulting in China's illicit acquisition of 220 million U.S. voter files. That information includes names, addresses, phone numbers, political party preferences, and other sensitive data that would be needed to register to vote and engage in other nefarious activities, which is exactly what was happening. This data loss presents an unprecedented election security nightmare.
And tonight, the Secretary of Homeland Security, Markwayne Mullin, has also spoken out.
We know, talking about our machines, we know for sure that our foreign adversaries, not our allies, foreign adversaries have parts that are vital pieces in our voting machines. We know that they can access what they consider the key to the back of these machines. We know that they can change voter registration and your vote. We know it's possible. There's not a question, it's not even for debate. One thing that I love about numbers and I love about facts is they don't lie. This isn't something that I'm trying to tell you to spin a narrative. This is what is going on.
Well, with me now to discuss the President's address is political commentator Dana Alexa. Dana, great to see you. I've heard two broad categories of response to this speech. I've heard some people say that this was a legitimate and necessary amalgamation of the various international and domestic electoral integrity problems that the US faces. And I've heard other people say that this was just a rehash of Donald Trump's grievances, particularly regarding the 2020 election, and was purely intended as a distraction both from the midterms as well as the Iran conflict. Where do you stand?
Well, it is interesting that a lot of people are going to say, why rehash? We're going to go back 6 years. Well, listen, it's not about rehashing it. I don't even think he is so tightly held on to it. It's about what can we do to change the future of our elections. We just found out, Will, that China had access to 220 million people's voting records. So what does that mean? That means that China knows their name, address, phone number, age, political affiliation. And so when you have that access to data, what can China do? Well, a couple of things. One being they can buy up ad space on Facebook, Google, X, you name it, YouTube, wherever the kids are, wherever people are. For boomers, it's Facebook. And so when you have access to people's data and buy ad space, you can kind of set forth, okay, how can I veer their thoughts on policy and, presidential things of that matter? How can I kind of like shape shift their viewpoint on either President Biden or President Trump or whoever's running? And so when you have access to that and a lot of people's information, you can really get into their minds, see what they like, follow algorithms, and you can really change the outlook of an election. And I think that's very dangerous.
I agree with that entirely, but this is why I found it a very difficult speech to analyse when he delivered it, and this was whilst we were on air last night, because there were 5 collections of documents that he was releasing, and the first collection of documents went to, as you said, Chinese cyber hacking, effectively 220 million US electoral files, which includes personal data, I should say, which has been collected. At the same time, the other 4 went to, I guess, grievances regarding the domestic electoral process, or the other 3 at least, the domestic electoral process, which for me seemed to cloud the picture. I thought it would have been a more effective speech if he just focused on the China side of it.
Well, I think he got into a lot of things, and you can go back and listen. You can pick apart a lot of things about it. I think one main thing that Trump did very well is wanting to prop up the Save America Act, and because we're so focused on this year's midterm elections, as you know, we're just 4 months away, and the outlook of future elections, it's really important that Republicans stand together united in this and pass this dang thing already, because we've been talking about it for so long. And so 2 main things lie within the Save America Act: 1, the national voter ID, and 2, proof of citizenship. And for however many years Democrats want to call President Trump a dictator, he's tyrannical, he's a madman. I think the most democratic thing you can do as a president is pass legislation that has voter integrity through and through, and to make sure that if you are a natural born citizen or a legal immigrant to the United States, that you are able to vote freely and not have to think about, will fraud take over? Is there going to be foreign influence? And I think these are the questions that we need to be asking as a Congress, as a people, as a body.
Well, my question would be, why now? Because again, I think that there is an element of politics in this, even if you do take these concerns as legitimate, and I think some of them certainly are. Why are we hearing this now again when you have an Iran conflict which now shows no signs of ending, and midterms which the Republicans are predicted to do poorly in?
Well, why now? I mean, why then? When Joe Biden was in charge of the United States of America, things were not looking so well, right? I mean, we were in an economic spiral. The border was wide open. I mean, there was essentially, it was like anarchy, if you were to ask me. So I think it's really important. Just imagine a world if we had a Joe Biden 2.0 and where this country would be headed. I mean, we had to, unfortunately, Trump was given such a not so great platform by him. And so we made a lot of successes since then. But it is very important. I would say, yes, the Iran war, of course, is at the forefront, but so is our election and who's going to lead the country, because ultimately the guy in charge of that is going to be the decision maker of our safety, of our budget, our deficit, of how can we survive and exist moving forward? As an American, my biggest thing is the border. I want to make sure that I'm safe when I leave my house. I want to make sure that, I can go somewhere close to the border. I live in San Diego, so I want to visit Tijuana at some point. Do I always have to look over my shoulder and think who's going to come out and get me? I don't know. And so I really think it's important that we have procedural and safety standards that are built for us as Americans. And, I'm going to always vote for the guy that's going to be voting for, that is going to be pushing ahead for my safety. That's what I'm going to do.
Thanks, Janet. Appreciate your time.
Thanks, Will.
Let's go to my panel. I'll start with our friends in the US. Jade, I'll go to you. What were your reflections on Trump's speech last night?
I think he's absolutely correct pushing the Save America Act, because I became a citizen last year and I had to qualify to become an American. And one of the greatest feelings was there they said, now you're eligible to vote. And I thought, well, that is such an accomplishment for me, and I'm not going to take that for granted. And if you just have illegals flooding into the country, people who have maybe other agendas and they want to sway elections, I don't think they should be able to vote in America's elections. And I don't know why that's such a hot take.
Do you think this was politically motivated as opposed to being a sincere attempt at electoral reform?
No, there's always a political motivation behind everything.
So that's succinctly put, and I agree with you. Matt, your reflections?
Well, I think it's one of the most important speeches he could possibly give, and I think he did a good job in this speech. You cannot have a secure country unless you have secure elections, and passing the Save America Act is vital because it will secure our elections. Right now in the United States, you do not need a photo ID to vote. That's insane. You do not need to prove that you're a citizen of the United States to vote. That's insane. To go buy a case of beer down the street, I need to show my ID, yet I don't need to show my ID to cast a ballot to vote in our elections. That's crazy. The bottom line here is we need to do away with crazy and do more common sense, particularly when it comes to our elections. And let's just not talk about 2020. Let's go back to 2012. The Mitt Romney for President campaign was attacked. There was cyber attack by the Chinese. In fact, one of their websites was taken down temporarily due to one of those cyber attacks by the Chinese. We have been here before. The bottom line here is we need to secure our elections. We need to counter what China is doing, but also we need to recognize that voter fraud exists. It took place in Pennsylvania, took place in Wisconsin. Those are two key political battleground states that decide the presidential election in this country. We must secure our electoral process. This should not be a Republican issue or a Democrat issue, but sadly, there are too many Republicans and too many Democrats who are holding up the Save America Act. That's wrong. That's an American issue. That's an American piece of legislation that all lawmakers should get behind. I encourage all lawmakers in Capitol Hill to get that bill passed.
I don't doubt that there's voter fraud in the US. There's voter fraud in one way or another in every single democratic country. My issue with the speech was that there, I think, was a very legitimate, and if it is accurate, terrifying case of Chinese cyber hacking, which would be one of the most widespread cases of cyber hacking in modern American history. 220 million electoral voter files with personal data associated with them. That in and of itself, I think, was my understanding, new revelation and something which should be taken incredibly seriously. But by including other elements into this speech around voting machines, counting machines, non-citizens being registered, the cases that he has made since saying the 2020 election was rigged, he diluted that message and he gave the left the opportunity to say this is just more grievance from Trump. Why do you think he did that? Why do you think he framed it that way?
Well, look, I think he framed it the way that's appropriate for the magnitude of the problem. You know, I didn't hear him in that speech go on and on about, his process to the 2020 election. He was essentially saying, I think in that speech, was that this is an American issue. I mean, he has his views on 2020, but this goes beyond 2020. This is for the upcoming elections. And I think he pointed to some very important facts in that speech. And I think the wisest thing the White House did was say, we're going to put this on our website. We're going to declassify this information, and we'll let the American people decide what they believe about this and how they view this horrific situation, because it is a horrific situation that we do not have as secure elections in this country that we should have. I mean, I go back to not having to show a photo ID to vote. That's a massive problem. Not having to show proof of citizenship, that's a problem. So while the speech did touch on, to your point, Will, China and the impact of that on our electoral process, I think one of the critical things he really pushed forward in that speech was a need to pass the Save America Act. To me, this is the most important thing that can be done right now in our country. Yeah, Iran's important, the economy is important, but you cannot have a secure country. You cannot have a true democracy. You cannot have true freedom unless you have secure elections. And millions of Americans nationwide are very concerned about this. And I think millions of Americans agree with President Trump on this, because he did talk about this on the heels of the 2020 election, and he won the last election with the Electoral College and the popular vote. But even after, on the heels of winning that election, there are still concerns. Again, this is not about Republican or Democrat. This is not about political party. This is generally, I think, about getting our election process as secure as we can get it. Part of that is having to show photo ID, show citizenship, getting this critical piece of legislation passed. That's the bigger element of all this, I think.
Stuart, I've got no doubt that you were up at 2 a.m. watching The Late Show live as this speech went to air. What did you make of it?
I think we need to put this in perspective, and I think this is a credible threat and believable. Let's look at how this works. The Chinese economy and the American economy are two competing economies of world powers. The Chinese economy is not working as well as the American economy. It's not performing anywhere near as much. But the difference is the Chinese economy mainly belongs to their state, and that means their fortunes are intertwined. So if they wanted to undermine the US and be more competitive, what would you do? Well, you'd potentially attack their democratic system, because their capital system essentially belongs to its shareholders. So it's totally believable, and I think we need to understand the fact that these things are happening, and in the race for greatness and in order to maintain greatness, these attacks are becoming more commonplace. And it's very clear that President Trump wants to be absolutely open book on the fact that this is a threat to the American nation.
At the same time, Elliot, he needed to basically say two things. He needed to say that there were problems with international or foreign threats to America's electoral integrity, or domestic irregularities and threats to electoral integrity. And then I think he probably also wanted to establish that then substantiates my claim that the 2020 election was rigged. He may have made that first point, but I don't think he actually substantiated, well, this is how all of those things put together meant that I would have otherwise won the election.
Yeah, listen, to use a phrase that perhaps the American listeners may not get, but it's very, very clear that he has an unresolved bee in his bonnet about the fact that he lost the 2020 election. And listen, I'm sure there was problems with the 2020 election. There's problems with every election. Democracy is an extremely messy thing. There's been problems in previous American elections. We know about the issues in the the JFK Nixon election, and in the Bush-Gore election. There's been problems with UK elections. Democracy is a very messy thing. Of course, there's lots of things you can do to improve it. I do generally think voter ID is a pretty logical, sensible thing to do. It's something that the last Conservative government here did. But at the same time, democracy is messy. These things are never perfect. There's always things at the margin going on, and you definitely do get the sense that even if he may have some legitimate gripes about the way that US elections are run, you do also just get the sense that he can't get over the fact that he lost 2020, and that I think that is not a great image for him to keep on projecting.
Well, the thing I find most ludicrous about the voter ID debate is that many on the left will say because less African Americans have ID documentation, that therefore voter ID requirements are racist. It really is
that's a nonsense.
It is a nonsense. It's the soft bigotry of low expectations.
Yeah.
Let me know your thoughts on that by visiting gbnews.com/your say. But still ahead on The Late Show Live. The Home Office wrongfully refunded migrants £19 million. I can confirm I was not one of them. And just wait until I tell you the best, or I perhaps should say the worst part about this story. You won't believe it. Also tonight, President Trump has praised Texas for implementing mandatory Bible study in school. But do they think that's the right move? This is The Late Show Live on the People's Channel, GB News. Now, and this is very much a leading question from me, are Western values under threat from trying to accommodate multiculturalism and religion? Because a plane passenger who is understood to be a Turkish migrant living in Germany allegedly invoked Islam's Sharia law to avoid sitting next to a woman on a Turkish Airlines flight. A police spokesperson said, and I quote, "According to initial witness statements, the man invoked Sharia law and refused to sit next to a woman. Sharia law is the code for living that all Muslims should adhere to, including prayers, fasting and donations to the poor." But it doesn't stop there. When the flight attendant tried to approach the man, he reportedly slapped her in the face. Well, with me now is Pickthall House Chairman Mustafa Warsi. Mustafa, what do you make of this story?
Hey, thank you so much for having me. So, I think the story is just completely ridiculous. The fact that it gets any airtime at all, the fact that we're even indexing so heavily on it shows how far we've fallen as a civilization to a certain extent, as far as accommodating people's weaponization or instrumentalization of belief and differences in order to simply justify bad behavior. This is not really an Islamic issue, even though he might claim it is, and even though from the outside it might seem like this is the case, because neither Saudi Arabian Air, neither Qatar Air, Bahrain Air, Turkish Air, even Pakistan Air, none of these airlines gender segregate on flights at all. The holiest site in all of Islam in Mecca is not gender segregated, and at the end of the day, I think that it is up to us here in the West to remain rational, cool-headed, and to be clinical and principled when maintaining order and upholding justice, and that we can't allow people to get away with bad behavior simply by invoking, petty differences. It's something that's both deeply offensive to the sensibility and rationality and principle here in the West, but I would argue it's also deeply offensive to Muslims itself, because it is taking something, like deep religious principles that are meant to enlighten life and develop spiritual connection, and instead use it to simply justify, antisocial behavior. From the reports, it sounds like he'd hurt a bunch of the cabin crew and got into an altercation with another passenger. This is very bad.
Yeah, it is very bad. But I also think it would be dangerous to look at this as merely an isolated incident. If you look at the UK at the moment, there are Sharia law councils. There is an anti-Muslim hostility definition or series of guidelines, which many people say will open up the door to two-tier justice in this country. Well, I should say the door's already been blown wide open, but open it up further to the special treatment of Muslims. Do you think there is a broader problem around two-tier treatment of particular religious groups, particularly the Muslim faith, in the United Kingdom and across continental Europe?
So I think this is an interesting and fairly complicated question, because if you talk to most Muslims, they certainly don't feel like that's the case. So they feel like an oppressed minority. They have their various grievances, some of which are justified, some of which are totally not justified. And simultaneously, you have other non-Muslim groups that are by and large present in the community as a whole, the majority white population here in Britain. And they have their own grievances, again, some of which are justified and some of which are not justified. I don't think that it's appropriate to additionally start discriminating within the legal system on the basis of religious difference or religious identity or belief. I think that the law is the law, and it is plain and simple. If somebody contravenes the law, then they should be punished, and they should be punished in precisely the same way as anybody else should be punished. Sharia councils are a slightly distinct matter insofar as
Mustafa, can I probe there, because the law is the law, but it's the interpretation of the law which has many people concerned. For example, there was that infamous case in recent years of a man who was, I believe, charged with inciting racial hatred for burning a Quran. Do you think that burning a Quran should be legal in the United Kingdom?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I say this as a fairly orthodox Muslim, insofar as I believe that the same tolerances that are afforded to Muslims in order to be able to practice their faith and live their lives in peace, the fact that they can operate mosques peacefully, the same tolerance should be extended to people expressing all sorts of views. If somebody wants to make a drawing of the Prophet, the Holy Prophet, it's not something that I'm going to go out and praise and be very happy about, but that doesn't mean that I have to go out and start attacking them. The fact that somebody's feeling threatened and out and hiding in Batley is a disgrace. It's really horrible. And the fact that, the government bends over backwards in certain fashions in order to accommodate this only makes a mockery both of our liberal democracy as a whole and further heightens communal tensions, and precisely it results in the conversation we're having, which is an important one to have.
Yeah, I think there are. I think there was.
It makes sense. It's really a question of maintaining a certain kind of principled commitment to liberalism.
Yeah, and that's, to be honest, something which I think we don't hear as much as we should in this day and age.
I absolutely concur, by the way. So I mean, a big part of the general project here is to ensure that there's this sort of trust gap between Muslims who feel like they're marginalized in whatever way, and then the white majority population who feel like they actually get special treatment, that this trust gap needs to ameliorate. Because largely speaking, in politics, people will weaponize whatever tools they have at their disposal in order to get ahead. And this is just like human nature. And so, when, the woke majority, or when liberal politics affords minority groups the ability to weaponize, their differences in order to be able to justify bad behavior, they will absolutely do that.
Mustafa, thanks very much for your time. Makes sense. Thank you for your time.
For sure, sir.
Let's now go to my panel. Stuart, what did you make of this story?
Yeah, I don't think this has really got anything to do with Sharia law or, any wider interpretation of it. I think this man is probably a misogynist that's assaulted somebody, and he should face the consequences of that. End of story.
Well, I don't think it is end of story in the sense that many people would argue that there are parts of the Islamic broader diaspora in the United Kingdom which do have problems with institutional sexism. Many people do see the burqa and the hijab, for example, as being worn in many instances under duress and being symbolic of female oppression. Many people will point to the coercion of women in particular families to vote in certain ways. Many people will look at traditional gender roles, in particular Islamic communities, as being evidence of the type of institutional misogyny that this particular isolated instance would be a broader symbolic reminder of.
I think it's important to point out this was in a Turkish man in Germany, not
sure.
in the United Kingdom.
I understand that, but take the broader arguments I've just made.
I take your point on board, and yes, within this religion, as with any, there are more extreme interpretations of their commandments, essentially. And we do need to have a cultural conversation about what we will accept within our British culture as compatible with our values and those of perhaps more extreme teaching that question those. And we should have that conversation. That's perfectly legitimate. However, I wouldn't want to interpret people's own choices and freedom of expression and religion to what that may be from their point of view, because I don't know that. What's important is we protect those freedoms for people to practice that faith in whichever way they wish to.
Elliot, there's the paradox of tolerance, right? And that is that if you tolerate the intolerant for too long, eventually intolerance will reign. Has the UK tolerated intolerance for too long?
Yeah, I mean, listen, Mustafa's obviously right that the vast majority of Muslims do not have an issue with sitting next to a woman on a plane. But I think, listen, let's flip this, right? The idea that a liberal atheist or a Methodist or an Anglican would have done this is obviously nonsense. This is obviously a problem distinct I'm afraid, to that religion. Listen, I'm the councillor for the area that GB News sits in, and there's a mosque that I walk past very frequently in my part, and the men's entrance is the main entrance at the ground level, whereas women have to climb down this little, staircase into the basement in order to pray. And it's very clear that that embeds a certain attitude towards women and the culture and that religion. That doesn't mean that most of those adherents don't actually, aren't able to sort of get around behaving civilized towards the other sex, but it does mean there is, I think, an inbuilt bias and an inbuilt hostility and sexism. And, listen, what my constituents, the people in my ward, my district, say all the time, the women, they are really, really nervous about walking down the Edgware Road, a street predominantly populated by a Muslim population, in the way that they are not concerned about walking somewhere like Richmond, because there is a very, very different treatment, a very, very different view of women within Islam than there is other faiths, and we need to be upfront and honest about that.
Yeah. Jade, I noted, for example, when there was that group call to prayer in Trafalgar Square, which hit the headlines earlier this year, it was very obvious that you had the men at the front and the women at the back. What do you make of the conversation this conversation?
Well, Sharia law is incompatible with the West, and as usual, the feminists are completely silent on this, even though everything about Sharia law is anti-feminism. And I believe that the Turkish-German man would probably be arguing for the verses in the Quran, which are 24:30 and 33:53, where they talk about keeping the purity of a Muslim man by segregating himself from women, whether it's his friend's wife or women in public. And so they want to cover them and keep them as far away as men from possible. And that's not something that's compatible in the UK, Europe, Germany, in America, anywhere. So we have to be very critical of this because it is anti-feminism and anti-Western culture.
Matt, whenever the discussion around the compatibility of Islam with Western liberal democracy comes up, you basically have some people that say Islam is fundamentally incompatible by its very nature because of its roots, the theological roots of the religion. And you'll have other people who say, well, you know what, this is just a problem around Islamic extremism. Where do you sit in this debate?
Well, you absolutely have Islamic extremism. We've seen the Muslim faith be used to commit violence, but we've also seen people of the Muslim faith who are very peaceful and don't commit violence. People should have the right to practice their faith, but people don't have the right to violence. And here in the United States, I think what's been important is President Trump really trying to secure our border, ensure people who do enter our country come in here legally so that they understand our values. They're assimilating to our culture. We're not assimilating to their culture. When you enter a country, become a citizen of that country, you're being a part of their culture and their country. And I think the UK and the US have faced challenges of this in the past. But, real quickly, I want to say, we're talking right now about a grown woman on this plane, and that's horrific what occurred there. I just want to take a moment to talk about a young girl in Minnesota who was sexually assaulted in 2006 by an individual who hid behind his culture, said that he did it because essentially it's what he did in his home country. He sexually assaulted that girl in Minnesota for years. And just recently, Governor Tim Walz of Minnesota, who, by the way, was Kamala Harris's running mate, a Democrat, just pardoned that individual. Now, thankfully, President Trump has deported that individual from the country, but you got to have political leaders, unlike Governor Walz, but you have to have political leaders who will stand on the side of ensuring that people are assimilating properly into a country, stand on the side of what's right and the values of a country. And what occurred on that plane or occurred in Minnesota, obviously it's wrong behavior, and I think this really does correlate to why we need to have a proper process when we go through citizenship in our countries. That's a big part of this debate and something that we need to continue to talk about.
Well, sadly, I think many GB News listeners and viewers will hear that anecdote and their minds will go to the rape gang scandal, which sadly continues this very day, where cultural differences have too often been used as a convenient excuse or a smokescreen for the most appalling behaviour imaginable. Thankfully, I think that the general attitudes towards that are changing. I don't think that's no longer acceptable in any way, but we certainly still have a long way to go in this country. GB News has contacted Turkish Airlines for a comment. We're yet to hear back. Let's take a quick look at some of the other main news in America. Fast food chain Taco Bell is removing lettuce from its menu in some states after investigations found it could be linked to an outbreak of explosive diarrhea caused by a parasite. The decision is said to have been taken out of an abundance of caution following discussions with health officials. President Trump has blamed Canada for wildfire smoke that could impact the World Cup final. White House officials are meeting with FIFA President Gianni Infantino ahead of Sunday's final to discuss the potential health dangers posed by wildfire smoke in the New York and New Jersey areas. And finally, Oscar-winning Irish actress Brenda Fricker, whose decades-long career included an Academy Award-winning performance in My Left Foot and a memorable role in Home Alone 2, has died aged 81 following a period of declining health. Still ahead on The Late Show Live.
I'm not looking to get into lawsuits, but I think I have an obligation to do it. This was so egregious.
There's been a major development in the president's $10 billion lawsuit against the BBC, and it could leave the corporation looking more vulnerable than ever. But first tonight, the Home Office wrongfully refunded migrants £19 million. And just wait until I tell you the best part about this story. You just won't believe it. This is The Late Show Live, only on the People's Channel, GBNews.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Another fine day by and large, a little bit less hot than recent days. A pleasant summer's day for most. There is the chance of seeing a shower, but if you're after rain, well, I'm afraid to say that most places won't see any all weekend. The odd shower across the east of England with thicker cloud here. And inland we'll see a bit more cloud today over northern England, Wales, parts of the Midlands, and here again too, one or two isolated but potentially heavy showers could develop. Most places fine and bright with sunny spells. Not as hot across the south, but we still get up to 24, 25 degrees. So still feeling pretty warm in that sunshine. Always a little cooler along some of these North Sea coasts with the breeze coming in. Continuing to feed in some cloud at times for Lincolnshire and East Anglia. A greater chance through the late afternoon and evening of the odd shower over South Wales and South West England, but they will be very hit and miss. But if we do see one, could be quite a potent downpour. Most of Northern Ireland, most of Scotland having a pretty pleasant summer's evening with a bit of a brisk northerly breeze across the far north, keeping temperatures a little lower here. Temperatures will dip away quite a bit on Saturday evening, so bear that in mind if you are heading out this evening. It will turn quite fresh quite quickly under largely clear skies. Still a bit of a northerly breeze blowing along the east coast, maybe some thicker cloud heading towards the northwest of Scotland, but generally clear skies, and those temperatures quite a bit lower than they have been over recent nights. Towns and cities in the north dropping down to 10 or 11 Celsius, but rural spots will be well below that, so well down into single figures. Sunday's another fine day by and large. Yes, a fresh start, but then sunny spells for most, a bit more cloud in the east again, one or two showers over northern Scotland perhaps, but generally the wind's light, plenty of sunny spells, and after that coolish start, temperatures in the afternoon for most places getting back into the 20s, mid-20s across the south. Bye for now.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Here at GB News, we made a promise to tell your stories. And on the 6th of August, we're marking 5 years of doing exactly that.
Celebrate with us by having your say. Join in the debates live on TV and radio.
And meeting your favourite presenters across the country, from Leeds to Aberdeen, from Belfast to Barry Island.
Plus, join me in Essex for our biggest live show of the year. Scan the QR code or visit gbnews.com/celebrate. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. GB News can reveal that migrants have received just under £19 million from administrative blunders within the Home Office after some foreign nationals were mistakenly reimbursed for periods where they were not entitled to claim. It's understood the money was paid through the Immigration Health Surcharge Reimbursement Scheme, according to the department's annual report. Well, let's go to my panel in London. Stuart, again, in the greatest scheme of things, £19 million is a drop in the ocean compared to the amount of debt that this country is accruing on an annual basis. At the same time, does this raise questions about the efficacy of Home Office protocols and procedures and general administration?
I think this is, you sort of outlined it there, I think this is a serious administrative error. Whether any ministerial intervention or policy or legislation could have prevented this, I'm really not quite certain that it perhaps could have done. But obviously this all adds up to quite a serious amount of money, and people will be quite understandably annoyed about it. But, you know, this was money that they thought they had paid in, and clearly they hadn't. So, yeah, a bit embarrassing.
Well, Elliot, the thing that's so frustrating about this, which will make so many people incredibly angry, is that apparently we can't reclaim this money from these immigrants. Surely the government should be trying harder, even if this is just for the optics of it, to be actually pulling back this money when you have so many English citizens, or I should say UK citizens, who feel like the government isn't doing enough for them.
I think the Home Office did say, to be fair, that they're going to try to reclaim some of it, but they just don't think that they're going to be successful in all of it. And of course, you do always have to balance the fact that taking these people to court and going through these proceedings will cost money itself. But listen, I mean, the Home Office is clearly a deeply, deeply troubled institution. Both Labour Home Secretaries, I think Jack Straw was very, very dismissive of it, but also Conservative Home Secretaries have said the same thing. And I think probably what needs to be done is we need to think about breaking up this department. I don't think it's necessarily obvious that we should be combining our immigration bureaucracy with our policing bureaucracy. They feel like two significant jobs that perhaps should be split up, because this just happens time and time again with the Home Office.
I disagree, Elliot, on that one. I think they're both arms of law enforcement, essentially, that need to be overseen by a Home Office minister that has the
one is the external border, though, right? And one's internal. I mean, that is quite...
No, our law is ubiquitous across everything, isn't it? You know, if people come here illegally, they've broken the law, and it's part of law enforcement. It's like you hear in ICE and police departments in the United States of America. They work alongside each other. They have, you know, a common goal of law enforcement. So no, I think the Home Office is in its correct makeup, and it's going through the largest set of reforms under Shabana Mahmood has ever faced, and that's now beginning to have some impact.
Well, it sounds like she won't be running the Home Office for too much.
She's going to do a good job somewhere else, Will.
Well, time will tell. Matt, I don't want you to get in the weeds on administrative blunders in the Home Office in the UK, but I want to pull out to a broader principle which infuriates me, and it infuriates me as a foreign resident of the United Kingdom, and that is that there are hundreds of thousands of, perhaps even millions now, sorry, there are millions of foreign nationals who get paid benefits in the United Kingdom, particularly when you get to the point where you can get what's called indefinite leave to remain. After 5 years, you effectively qualify for all of the benefits that a British citizen can qualify for. My understanding is you could save about £10 billion a year in this country if you stopped paying foreign nationals benefits. I just find this as a policy absolutely extraordinary. Don't you?
Well, you're not the only one, because I do too. And unfortunately, we've seen a lot of that here in the United States. Look, President Trump has cracked down on that, Will. But look, just take the state of Mississippi. You know, I saw one report that showed it cost the state of Mississippi roughly $100 million just to fund, if you will, illegal immigrants. And you know, you've seen Democrats wanting to give illegal immigrants in the United States free health care coverage, free this, free that. They're not citizens of the United States. So this goes back to, whether it's in the UK or the US, continue to push forward, or frankly in the UK, doing more to push forward with the necessary reforms to ensure that you're taking care of your citizens. I just happen to think, not being there on the ground, you all are, but as an outside observer, I would get the sense that the people of the UK are fed up with this. You know, they see a country where the Royal Forces, Air Force, is the smallest it's ever been. They're seeing a country where it can't even afford to build more prisons, and thus I saw one report that the UK may very well be letting prisoners out of the prison system because they can't afford to build more prisons. The people of the UK, I think, just want more investment in the UK and supporting the citizens of the UK. And so I think this goes back to the conversation we've had throughout this evening, and that is deep reforms that are needed to the migration process, illegal immigration process, immigration process in the UK. Absolutely, I think if you're a taxpayer of the UK, you're really upset about this. And this just looks like pure incompetence by the government of the UK. I'm not sure what's worse, the lost money or the incompetence. I think both are bad.
I mean, they are now incoming.
Well, more examples of incompetence that my producer has given me. A further £3.2 million was squandered on deportation flights that were subsequently cancelled, classified in official documents as fruitless payments. The Home Office also lost £35.2 million on a botched contract to upgrade the police national database. Again, Jade, the Home Office incompetence in this area is shocking, but it's also shocking in the context of a country in which we don't have the money to waste when the fiscal position is so incredibly dire.
Yeah, it sounds like we should send Nick Shirley over there, whether it's incompetence, corruption, or anything else. It's just ridiculous. And that money could have gone towards our elderly who, as you know, suffered during the winter. And people are struggling. You know, why is that money going to migrants? Why isn't it going to public roads, schools, our health system in the UK? That's where it should be going, not migrants who just feel like they want to have a better life in the UK. They could stop off in any other country on the way. Why do they go to the UK? Because our benefits there are incredible.
I think that is the key point, that the incentives here are such where until you actually remove the incentives to come to this country, with respect to illegal migration, you're going to have people continuing to come, regardless of tinkering around the edges with policies like one-in, one-out deals or toughening up potential controls on French beaches. Stuart, I just want to quickly get your thoughts on that argument that says that foreign residents of the United Kingdom should not have access to any benefits. Do you agree with that?
Well, look at the asylum and immigration bill that's going through right now. Talked about all the necessary reforms needed to the immigration system and the Home Office. They are now happening. Indefinite leave to remain is being extended, and there's a greater gap being applied for those who can come here and then seek benefits if they wish to remain. So exactly these things are being addressed, and that's why there's a lot more funding for things like roads, for things like the health system, because these sorts of pieces of waste are being addressed, and we're not going to continue to spend hundreds of millions of pounds housing illegal immigrants in hotels. They're now processing their applications, and for those who cannot remain, whereas before they were remaining it's indefinite state of purgatory, they can then be returned. And you talked about the flights that had been money wasted on them. It's because the mechanism for removing people was halting them on the runway. That's now been addressed as part of this bill. So these things are now happening, the reforms are taking place.
Okay, well, a Department of Health and Social Care spokesman told GB News, "We have taken immediate action to stop any further incorrect payments. Enhanced checks and controls are now in place to prevent this happening again, and we are working across government to safeguard public money. This has had no impact on frontline NHS services or patient care." Still ahead on The Late Show Live.
I'm not looking to get into lawsuits, but I think I have an obligation to do it. This was so egregious.
A major development in the President's lawsuit against the BBC. This is The Late Show Live, only on GB News. Let's take a look at some of the stories inside tomorrow's papers. And Three Lions skipper Harry Kane has addressed our semi-final loss in a new Instagram post. He says, "No words are big enough right now to overcome this empty feeling in the stomach. We were close, really close to another final, but it wasn't enough. We've given everything over these last 7 weeks, and to fall short is hard to take. I know the expectations are high, and rightly so. We've been knocking on the door for 8 years now, but again, I'm missing that final piece of the jigsaw. That's where we have to go away, process it, and find a way to get better. I'm so proud of the boys and what we have shown throughout the tournament. Some tough games and tough environments that we had to overcome." He goes on to say that after being knocked down, they must pick themselves back up and go again, before thanking every single fan who believed in them. He closes with, "As always, win or lose, we learn and go again." Well, Elliot, I'd say a couple of things. Number one, Harry Kane does just look like he's a class act and a genuinely nice bloke. At the same time, the thing which is so frustrating, and you have to put this at the feet of Tuchel, the manager, and that is that the lessons from since 2018 seemingly haven't been learnt, because they did the exact same thing that they've done in 3 major tournaments since that time, which is shut up shop with a lot of time left on the clock. And it doesn't matter whether you understand football or not. This is a principle in pretty much
every team sport, you cannot just go into your shell and try and defend a lead grimly when there's a lot of time left on the clock. And for some reason, the English management just did not understand that.
Yeah, and you certainly can't do it against Argentina and the best player in the world, Lionel Messi. And listen, for all Argentina's disgraceful behaviour off the pitch, the way that they played the game was far superior to England. You saw even when Argentina went 2-1 up, and it was at the 93rd, 94th minute, they were still chasing England players down deep into the England players' half.
Yeah.
We didn't start pressing Argentinian players until they were about 25 yards from our goal. And as you mentioned, there was, I think, 35 minutes on the clock at which point we started doing this. And that's even if you don't include injury time. So the second I think England fans started to see that happening, I think we all had that feeling about the inevitable. And it is shocking that we haven't learned that lesson, as you mentioned. And let's hope that we do by next time.
Stuart, I heard an argument on X, and again, I'm not suggesting that this is as a result of having a foreign manager, but I heard the argument more generally that says that the English team should be coached by an English man or woman. Just because, you know, you have to, if the players need to be English, then therefore the coaching staff should also have to be English as well. Do you buy into that argument?
No, not at all. I think Thomas Tuchel's served the England team extremely well.
What's the distinction then between having to actually be an English man or an English woman in the case of the Lionesses to play but not to coach? What's the distinction there?
I think that's something we need to speak to the head of FIFA about. Whether we'll get a definitive answer, I don't know.
There are some countries in particular sports. I think of the New Zealand All Blacks in rugby. They would never in a million years put a non-New Zealander as the coach of the All Blacks. So I'm saying from a country level, why does the English team have a policy seemingly of thinking it's okay to have a non-Englishman as the coach?
Yeah, it's been convention for a very long time now. And I think what really matters is that we have the top English players represented English football at the highest level. And I'm pretty proud of that. I'm pretty proud of what the boys have done. But yeah, I think we need to learn that attack is the best form of defence and make sure we remember that in the future.
Matt, what have been your reflections on this World Cup tournament in the US?
Well, you all made it further than the United States, so credit to you on that. But that's not saying much.
Yeah, the United States crushed Australia 2-0, so I'm at the very bottom of this pecking order here. Go on.
But Team USA did a phenomenal job as well. We're really proud of our team here in the United States. But really what's been amazing to watch is just the energy around this World Cup, particularly here in the United States, hosting these games. And, we've been really proud as Americans to do that. And just amazing to see people from the UK come here.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but this is actually very timely. In breaking news, literally right now, Trump has just spoken about Thomas Tuchel and Harry Kane. Let's have a listen.
Here we go.
You have a great player in England who I played golf with, you know that, right? And he is Harry, who's been fantastic. I think they perhaps made a mistake when they made him a defensive player. What do I know about soccer? they took the league and they took their best player and then put him on defense. Then somehow, we got to be a little offensive, right? But no, I'm not going to call it. Look, what do I know about coaching?
Elliot, he's not wrong.
He's not. I mean, you have to give him credit. I mean, he does have quite a good sense of humour at times, and
he knows attack is the best form of defence.
Even he knows it. This is the thing. Even Trump knows it. Yeah. Look, maybe he's been watching GBNews. I do know that Trump watches GBNews.
Maybe President Trump could be the next manager.
Well, there we
of the
go.
England
That would be a
football
setup for the
team.
Wouldn't
that be an interesting?
That would get very interesting.
I think the whole panel can get behind that. I think.
Have some confidence in yourself, President Trump.
Jade, your thoughts?
No, just to echo what Matt was saying, it's been beautiful seeing, the Brits and the Europeans head over here, experience American culture, understand the freedoms that we have. I saw even like Haaland was wearing a cowboy hat, cowboy boots, and he was loving it. So it's fantastic seeing everyone come together for once instead of fighting.
Jade, this is the first time we've done a GBNews show together. That's a relatively posh English accent, isn't it? What's your background? You're from England initially?
No, I'm actually from Wales, Cardiff. Yeah.
Cardiff. Oh, okay. Well, my ear is not as I guess compared to an Australian accent, everything sounds posh, really. Why did you make the decision to move to the US?
I moved over as a model. I was working in entertainment and I wanted to have free speech and the ability to protect myself, and America is the dream. And so I made it happen over 10 years. It was a long process and expensive, but I'm really proud to be an American.
What's been
I guess as you look back on your country of birth, being the United Kingdom, and then you look back at Wales, how do you reflect on the differences between the two countries now?
It's staggering, but I also worryingly see this happening in the US. I see them electing people like Mamdani and having Ilhan Omar in Congress. They're all talking about Sharia law and being more progressive with Islam, and I'm there going, okay, you guys are only about 5-10 years behind the UK, and this is not a good path to go down. And that's why I started speaking up, is because I wanted to warn Americans and hopefully in that process help save the UK.
Well, this UK certainly does need saving at the moment. That's just about all we've got time for this hour, team. Thank you very much for that. But there is plenty more coming in the next hour, ladies and gentlemen, including this.
They put me out and they have me saying, and you can't tell the difference, things that I never said.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Another fine day, by and large, a little bit less hot than recent days. A pleasant summer's day for most. There is the chance of seeing a shower, but if you're after rain, well, I'm afraid to say that most places won't see any all weekend. The odd shower across the east of England with thicker cloud here. And inland, we'll see a bit more cloud today over northern England, Wales, parts of the Midlands, and here again too, one or two isolated but potentially heavy showers could develop. Most places fine and bright with sunny spells. Not as hot across the south, but we still get up to 24-25 degrees. So still feeling pretty warm in that sunshine. Always a little cooler along some of these North Sea coasts with the breeze coming in, continuing to feed in some cloud at times for Lincolnshire and East Anglia. A greater chance through the late afternoon and evening of the odd shower over South Wales and South West England, but they will be very hit and miss. But if we do see one, could be quite a potent downpour. Most of Northern Ireland, most of Scotland having a pretty pleasant summer's evening with a bit of a brisk northerly breeze across the far north, keeping temperatures a little lower here. Temperatures will dip away quite a bit on Saturday evening, so bear that in mind if you are heading out this evening. It will turn quite fresh quite quickly under largely clear skies. Still a bit of a northerly breeze blowing along the east coast, maybe some thicker cloud heading towards the northwest of Scotland, but generally clear skies, and those temperatures quite a bit lower than they have been over recent nights. Towns and cities in the north dropping down to 10 or 11 Celsius, but rural spots will be well below that, so well down into single figures. Sunday's another fine day by and large. Yes, a fresh start, but then sunny spells for most, a bit more cloud in the east again, one or two showers over northern Scotland perhaps, but generally the wind's light, plenty of sunny spells, and after that coolish start, temperatures in the afternoon for most places getting back into the 20s, mid-20s across the south. Bye for now.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Thank you, Britain, for making GB News Radio such a huge success. Whether you're in the car, on the go, or listening at home, thank you for choosing us as your radio station.
Britain deserves a newsroom that puts the facts and your voice first.
Well, and that's what you get on GB News. Lively debates, lively conversation.
And we're not afraid to hold power to account.
And each other. So join me, Andrew Pierce.
And me, Miriam Cates, for Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 on GB News.
Here at GB News, we made a promise to tell your stories. And on the 6th of August, we're marking 5 years of doing exactly that.
Celebrate with us by having your say. Join in the debates live on TV and radio.
And meeting your favourite presenters across the country, from Leeds to Aberdeen, from Belfast to Barry Island.
Plus, join me in Essex for our biggest live show of the year. Scan the QR code or visit gbnews.com/celebrate. Terms and conditions apply.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From court mornings
to warm family brunches,
from football to tennis in the car,
in the kitchen.
GB News Breakfast is there with the stories you need and the conversations that matter.
Anyway, let's talk business.
Well, it has been a historic night in British politics.
It's astonishing, isn't it? We're here again to start your day just right. GB News Breakfast.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints. How many fingers have I got up?
About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Some people enjoy lazy Sunday mornings, but not me. What's the truth of the matter?
So that's a very live question.
Would you support him if he waters down these plans? Before the spin sets in, I'll be getting to the truth.
This is personal.
No soft questions, no easy answers.
It's one thing if the state has rules in this country. It's another thing whether the police and others actually police them.
Setting the agenda and holding those in power to account. You can't really blame her if the system is set up this way. You will not want to miss it, trust me. The Camilla Tominey Show, Sundays from 9:30, only on GB News.
Here at GB News, we made a promise to tell your stories. And on the 6th of August, we're marking 5 years of doing exactly that.
Celebrate with us by having your say. Join in the debates live on TV and radio.
And meeting your favourite presenters across the country, from Leeds to Aberdeen, from Belfast to Barry Island.
Plus, join me in Essex for our biggest live show of the year. Scan the QR code or visit gbnews.com/celebrate. Terms and conditions apply.
Britain is not just a geographical expression. We are a people bound together by history and culture that are distinctively British. Join me to celebrate our music, theatre, artworks and literature, which we can explore and enjoy together.
Everybody's welcome.
Sunday with Michael Portillo. Every Sunday at 11 a.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Live from London, England, this is GB News with the stories shaping Britain and America. Comrade Burnham, Britain's next Prime Minister, is promising the most left-wing government in 40 years. But will it be revolution or economic ruin? This is just going to be insufferable, isn't it? In other news, Trump's $10 billion lawsuit. There's been a major development in the president's lawsuit against the BBC, and it could leave the corporation looking more vulnerable than ever.
I'm not looking to get into lawsuits, but I think I have an obligation to do it. This was so egregious.
And more money for migrants. The Home Office wrongly refunded migrants £19 million. And just wait until the best part about this story, you won't believe it. And religion returns to the classroom. President Trump praises Texas for putting Christianity back into public schools, but Jewish leaders are warning it could fuel anti-Semitism. Do you support mandatory Bible study? And the world's smallest violin is playing just for the Duchess of Montecito. Moaning Meghan apparently felt unable to appear publicly during her UK visit. However, will the British people recover from not seeing her? I'm Will Kingston, and this is The Late Show Live. Welcome back to The Late Show Live for a third and final hour, ladies and gentlemen. As I rearranged my tie, I still have never quite got that move from the standing camera to the seating arrangement as smooth as I would like. But at the same time, I'm not a particularly graceful mover at the best of times. Let's go to my London panel. We've got Labor councillor Stuart Fawcett and Conservative councillor Elliot Keck, and in Washington we have journalist and host of the Warwick Report, Jade Warwick, and former Chief of Staff to Marco Rubio, Matt Terrell. Thank you very much, one and all, for joining me for this third and final hour. Let's go to our main news story of this hour, and that is that the US President has dropped part of his $10 billion defamation lawsuit against the BBC, which was brought over claims that a Panorama documentary misleadingly edited a speech he delivered. It's understood that the claims against BBC Studios Distribution Limited and BBC Studios Productions Limited, the broadcaster's commercial and production arms, have been dropped, but the lawsuit as a whole against the state broadcaster will continue. With me now is defamation defence lawyer Jeff Lewis. Jeff, thanks very much for your time. Bring me up to speed with these latest developments. Was this a matter of just pragmatism, or what was at play behind this decision to amend the claim?
That's exactly right. It's a practical decision to simplify the case. There's going to be one defendant instead of three, and the case is going to proceed just as it would before, with a trial scheduled for February.
Remind our audience, what was the defamatory action that Trump is alleging against the BBC?
You know, most cases of defamation involve a false statement. This is about false editing or misleading editing. The allegation is that someone at the BBC edited Trump's own words on January 6th and made it suggest he was promoting a riot.
Now, obviously, that sort of false editing goes against all sorts of journalistic ethics. It was incredibly poor from the BBC. At the same time, I imagine that they may argue that Trump's reputation is already widely known. People have made up their minds on him for better or for worse. He is arguably the most famous person on the planet. So how does that play into this?
That's exactly right. The lead-off argument for the BBC is that Trump is essentially libel-proof or defamation-proof, given his stature and notoriety, at least for that event of that day. The other big defense they have is actual malice. Donald Trump has to prove someone at the BBC did this with knowledge that what they were doing would cast Donald Trump in a false light. It's a very high burden in the United States to prove a defamation claim.
And that number, £10 billion, sounds farcical. How do you get to that number?
Yeah, in the U.S., it's up to the jury. There's no real benchmark on how you measure someone's reputation, but someone with as big of a presence as Donald Trump is going to ask for a big number, but I'd be shocked if a jury returned a number like that.
Yeah, I think the BBC budget would be in a bit of trouble if that was the case. I think the UK economy would be in a bit of trouble if that was the case. What is the likelihood of success for Trump?
I give it a very low likelihood for the reasons we've already discussed. And also there's some jurisdictional barriers, and there's some other technical arguments about dragging the BBC into a Florida courtroom. And the reality is most cases don't go to trial. Most cases settle. And so I don't see the BBC writing a big check anytime soon.
And my understanding is that there may be the possibility of the US government joining the litigation. How likely is that, and how unusual would it be?
Prior to this Trump administration, it would be highly unusual, highly irregular. But these days, a lot of the norms are out the window, and I could see it happening.
What would be the rationale behind that?
Well, if you look at the caption of the complaint, he didn't just sue as Donald Trump. He sued as President Donald Trump. And he's going to argue that his image as president, as someone who held the office, was damaged, and therefore he should have the resources of the U.S. government behind him in prosecuting this case.
And on principle, as a defamation defence lawyer yourself, what do you think about political figures actually bringing defamation lawsuits? Some people would argue you are part of the contest of ideas. You really should have a thicker skin than this. Do you think it is right on principle that politicians should be bringing defamation lawsuits?
I actually do, but the reason I do is because in the US, it's much harder for a public figure to win a lawsuit like this because of a case called New York Times versus Sullivan and the First Amendment. We make it much harder. You got to prove actual malice, that somebody knew what they were doing is wrong. And it's really hard to prove what somebody was thinking the moment they said something or the moment they were in the editing room making a cut.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. Jeff, thanks very much for your time this morning.
Of course.
I want to go to my panel now, and I think there's probably two conversations that need to be had here. A, there is this specific defamation case, but Elliot, there's a broader conversation around the culture at the BBC. Now, you will recall when this editing decision was made, from memory, you know, we will often, and you do this on GBNews, you often cut down interviews for brevity because there's only a certain amount of minutes in a particular TV show. But you don't change the fundamental meaning of what a particular interviewee said. Now, in this instance, from memory, they literally took two parts of his speech at very, very different times of the speech and effectively spliced them both together. Now, no journalist could possibly defend that. The ethics of it were terrible. At the same time, do you think Trump was right in actually bringing this action in the first place?
Yeah, and I'm listening, it's worse than that, right? This was not two clips spliced together at a moment's notice for a news show. This was done for a pre-made documentary that, you know, called Panorama. I think it's about 45 minutes an hour. That would have been prepared weeks, months in advance of it going live, that would have gone through numerous different editors and different layers. So it is as egregious as I think the president makes it out to be. I think it's one of the most appalling examples of journalistic malpractice in the United Kingdom's history. I think it, in and of itself, should be enough for the licence fee to be scrapped. We shouldn't have to pay taxpayers' money in order to get this. As to the president's lawsuit, I think, listen, it's quite clearly a stunt. It's a stunt to keep attention to it, to keep reminding people the way that he was treated by, as he would call it, the mainstream media. I don't think there's any real chance of success. But listen, in terms of keeping it in the headlines, I think it's a story that is worth keeping in the headlines.
Elliot, I don't think there's any real chance of success either, so I'm going to take the red meat that Elliot has provided me on the licence fee. Do you think the licence fee should be scrapped?
I'm really worried about losing the British Broadcasting Corporation because we say easy things like scrap the licence fee. The BBC has a really important role to play. It's also a really important diplomatic tool and says a lot on our branding as a country and what we stand for.
Important diplomatic tool. Is Xi Jinping
good relations with the United States.
Spare time? Are they watching the BBC?
Yeah, but I look at this one instant, and this is one, as you say, it is quite egregious. But let's look at the impact of the BBC World Service and you know, all the broadcasting that goes on around the world. So I think if we forget those elements and we look at these things in isolation...
the BBC's done more damage to international diplomacy. The President of the United States is literally taking them to court. That can't be good for international diplomatic relations.
In this instance, some people have done some damage through the BBC, but broadly speaking, the British Broadcasting Corporation, very few places have something that has as much oversight and public funding that goes into it to try and achieve balance. So we have, you know, a broadcast that has there, and to actually have that, which can then broadcast around the world, report from around the world, is quite a serious asset. Now, look. Can I
stop you for a second? Because I don't think anyone who watches the BBC now could think that they actually deliver balanced, impartial news.
Yeah, but
there is an obvious systemic
the BBC
institutional
all the
preference
time
towards left-wing news.
All the time. I watch the BBC all the time, and there are things that I think are unfair and unbalanced, and the people who I disagree with are saying the same thing. So I think that's actually sometimes a measure of success in what they're doing, but there's a difference. With the BBC, we have a lever that we can pull, which we can constantly strive for better standards, that not every provider is always going to reach for, and we have that with the BBC. And what that means is it creates a better environment for all media channels to operate within, because they can all have their own brand. The BBC one needs some work, I understand that, but I have faith in it as an institution, and I'm not just going to say let's throw the baby out with the bathwater and throw away the licence fee. It needs modernising, but it doesn't need scrapping.
Even if you ignore the institutional systemic left-wing bias of the BBC, I don't understand what the rationale is for a publicly... One second, I don't understand what the rationale is for a publicly funded broadcaster in a day and age where you literally have access to an almost thousands and thousands of news sources. Like, what is the rationale? It may have been the rationale in the 1930s when everyone just had one radio channel they could listen to, but there isn't a rationale or a public interest for it now.
I disagree. I think there's an absolute place for it in the market. It needs to modernise, as you say.
But what is the place for it?
Has changed. To have a corporation that is there and its mission is to provide that balance as part of its charter, and not every media organisation is always going to commit to that in the same way. There are always different editorial outlooks on whatever media you look at, and the BBC having their place in that market is totally justified. And I think we would lament its loss if we were to just not consider that. Because there is a large supply doesn't mean there is always a great deal of quality.
I'm not suggesting we lose. I'm suggesting cut taxpayer funding, make it a streaming service for all the entertainment and drama offerings. In that case, you actually then open it up to a global market, and you may actually have more commercial success than what they currently have. And when it comes to the news, again, similar thing. Let them try and stand on their own 2 feet. Let them try and compete with BBC, with GB News, with the same budget that GB News has, and let's see how they go.
We've already done that.
I'll keep in mind at the moment, ladies and gentlemen, GB News is still the #1 rating news channel in this country. Matt, what do you have any thoughts on this particular issue?
Well, there's what happens in a judicial court and then what happens in the court of public opinion. And we'll see what happens in the judicial court. But look, in the court of public opinion, there is no question, particularly here in the United States, that the BBC took a hit in the court of public opinion. I think many Americans nationwide were upset to see that the BBC did not accurately portray what occurred around January 6th. They edited that clip. Go ahead, Will.
I was going to ask, and because I agree with you on that, but what's Trump's approach been to publicly funded broadcasters in the United States?
Well, look, I think I want to speak for the president, but we do have an organization like PBS, which has been a public broadcasting station here in the United States that many would argue, particularly conservatives here in the United States, is a biased organization. You saw last night, or in the lead up to last night's address, many media outlets in the United States did not cover President Trump's address. You know, back in the day when a president asked for prime time to address the nation, all major networks would cover his address. That didn't happen last night. I call that bias. You know, these media outlets have a responsibility to cover the President of the United States when he asks for prime time address because he's been elected by the people. President Trump won the Electoral College and the popular vote in 2024. The people elected him. And I think many Americans nationwide and people in the UK have growing distrust with traditional media outlets. And the reason why is they believe they're biased. People in the UK and people in the United States believe the BBC is biased. And it's not just the BBC. To your point, Will, similar outlets in the United States, I mean, many would argue PBS here in the United States is a similar kind of outlet, if you will, but they're biased. And, you know, these are public airwaves in many cases that media outlets are using in the United States that they get for free. And so to be biased and not do accurate coverage is inappropriate. And one other point I'd work in here, we talked earlier about election integrity. You know, I do believe many Americans view it when the media is not accurately portraying what's taking place out there, particularly in the lead up to a presidential election, that's not, you know, holding to the integrity of our elections. The job of journalists, the job of media is to report the facts. I think GBNews does a great job reporting the facts. That's why I'm on here tonight.
Yep, well, I think the ratings reflect that, and I can note that the BBC did not broadcast Trump's speech last night, nor did CBS in the United States. Jade, your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think that, you know, the BBC has absolutely no incentive to hold up a specific standard or strive to be better, because the licensing fee is not optional, it is a requirement. And so they're just up on their pedestal. And, you know, they edited out protest peacefully. And that's what Trump really wants to push forward here, because editing that out shows that he was trying to create some sort of violent protest. But if they had left it in, they would have shown the truth, that he said protest peacefully. He didn't say riot. He didn't call for violence like that.
Jade, I just want to say something there where you've said the license fee is mandatory. It's not. If in this country, if you don't watch the BBC, you don't have to pay for it.
That's not true. That's not true. If you watch any live television on any platform. So let's say you're watching GB News on YouTube on your tablet right now, you legally have to be paying the license fee, money that goes directly to the BBC, not to GB News. So that's not true. Any live television consumption in the United Kingdom requires the license fee to be paid.
Yeah, and look, aside from the fact I think that is just incredibly unfair, it is such an antiquated way to try and raise revenue for a public service that I can't believe that it is still in place. I note, for example, that Reform have made it policy to scrap the licence fee, so we'll see how that all plays out. On the issue of the BBC splicing a clip of President Trump, the broadcaster said it sincerely regrets the manner in which the video clip was edited, but added that they strongly disagree there is a basis for the defamation claim. Well, let me know your thoughts. Should we scrap the licence fee? I think if I know the GB News audience, I've got a pretty good idea of what you'll say, but please reinforce it nonetheless. gbnews.com/your say. One viewer has said GB News reports around the world, and I can say they stand more for the British people than the BBC does. Well, I agree wholeheartedly. Jackie says the BBC have an important role to play. They have a huge responsibility. Sadly, they have become very arrogant, very self-righteous. Hear, hear. Sam says whether you like Trump or not is irrelevant. A public broadcaster has a duty to represent his words accurately. And another GB News viewer or listener says, take it to trial. Full disclosure might finally reveal what both Trump and the BBC would rather keep private. Interesting thought. Still ahead on The Late Show Live, the Duchess of Montecito, moaning Meghan, apparently felt unable to appear publicly during her UK visit. Do you feel sorry for her? Do get in touch. This is The Late Show Live, only on the People's Channel, GB News. Moving on, could mandatory Bible lessons in schools fuel anti-Semitism? That's the question being asked in Texas after the State Board of Education voted to approve Bible studies as part of the school curriculum. The policy, due to come into effect in 2030, will mean children from the age of 6 will study stories including David and Goliath, Daniel and in the Lion's Den, and Noah's Ark. But some Jewish leaders argue the ruling is unconstitutional and warn it could contribute to a rise in anti-Semitism across the state. With me now, the Chief Executive Officer for Teacher Freedom Alliance and former Oklahoma State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Ryan Walters. Ryan, great to see you. What do you make of this?
That's one of the most absurd things I've heard, and I've heard a lot in this fight to bring the Bible back to education. But that's absolutely ridiculous. We brought the Bible back to education in Oklahoma. They're going to do it in Texas as well. How do you understand American history, the history of Western civilization? How do you understand most of the literature of the Western canon without an understanding of the Bible and its background knowledge around those subjects? It's absolutely ridiculous. The same groups claiming this are the left-wing groups aligned with the teachers' unions and the other radical left-wing groups that are actually anti-Semitic. So this is them projecting this onto other organizations. There's absolutely no way that understanding the biblical underpinnings of Western civilization would by any stretch cause anti-Semitism. It will actually cause a better understanding of Western civilization.
On that, I agree. This has obviously been one of those debates which has been an almost constant presence in American political life. I recall, 15 or so years ago, it was all about whether or not creationism should be taught in science classrooms. In many respects, this is just the next phase in what has been a continuous battle in the United States.
No, you're absolutely right. This is a war for Western civilization. The reality is the radical left that we've seen are trying to destroy Western civilization by attacking its values. They want no understanding of the Bible's role in American history and Western civilization. They want to bring in cultural Marxism, this rot that we've seen undermine all of Western civilization and the values that help produce it. And so what we've got to continue to do is fight to ensure that our students here in America and in Europe understand how did we get to where we are today? What were the values of those people before us? What does history tell us? And the left is going to constantly fight to indoctrinate our students rather than educate them. This is a battle that must be won for the future of Western civilization. That is not hyperbole. That's not overstating it. History tells us what happens if you don't know your history.
It's interesting if you use the word history, though. So let's take Noah's Ark as an example. The vast majority of people would look at Noah's Ark as a parable as opposed to something that literally happened. Should that be taught as straight history, or should it be taught as a moral lesson?
Look, it should be taught as history as recorded in the Bible. I mean, again, you're looking at a book that has been widely studied throughout American history. Whether a student wants to believe in Christianity, wants to believe in all aspects of the Bible, that's up for the individual student. And what I think the left has done is they try to shift this debate. We're not forcing kids to be Christian. We're not forcing those values on them or all the beliefs from the Bible. What we're saying is, to understand Western civilization and literature, you need to understand the Bible. It's up to you whether you choose to understand, believe all of it or not. That is an individual decision. But what we want are academically literate students. So again, we want them to understand what's taught in the Bible. Again, that's completely up to them whether they choose to accept it or not. But it should be taught as a book that was very prevalent throughout history.
And on the historic significance on the Bible as a text, I agree entirely. There's been no book which has been more significant in shaping the world. At the same time, if you're teaching this to, I don't know, kids who are 8 or 9 years old, they may not be able to understand that whilst there is a moral lesson to be drawn from it, you can't fit every single animal species on a boat. How do you actually put this into a context for students?
Yeah, well, when you're talking to, and again, it's got to be age appropriate, right? You're going to introduce them to biblical studies throughout their time, throughout their coursework. So you start off by introducing them to some of the concepts in the Bible, some of the biblical stories. We see a lot of the schools that are introducing things, like the Great Commandment, you do unto others as you would have them do unto you. You talk through some of those concepts, and you talk through some of the stories that were recorded in historical text. And you say, look, these are some of the stories that are throughout history that have been recorded, and you allow students to understand that has been very popular throughout American history and Western civilization. So as they get older, they will begin to have their own understanding and own decision making around the deeper concepts in the Bible. But you make it age appropriate, you build on it over time, and you make sure that students understand, again, the moral underpinnings of the Bible are going to be very important for young students to understand, as well as you're talking to them about self-discipline, about character values. And so there are ways that you can embed that throughout the curriculum without getting into that deeper study until they're much older and are much handle that.
Right, we may just be, that's Ryan, I picked up that last part. Thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it this morning. Let's go to the panel now. I'll start with Matt in the US. Matt, without wanting to put words in your mouth, I imagine you're broadly supportive of this. But my question, which I was going to get to with Ryan, we didn't get the chance, would be, do you think this sets a precedent for left-wing politicians in democratic states to say that it is equally important to teach Islam in schools?
It might, but I think it's the right thing to do. The truth is, religion, the sense of Christianity, is at the core and founding of our country. If you go back and look at the documents, what our founders did at the very beginning of our nation, religion, Christianity, God were central to all of the creation of our country, the founding of our country. And look, as to what the left might do, they've already done many things in our schools. Just a couple of years ago under President Biden, in Austin, Texas, you had a 4th grade teacher read a book that was about an individual's transgender journey. I believe the book was called Call Me Max. Now, I don't believe it's appropriate, and many parents and many Americans do not believe it's appropriate for that 4th grade teacher to read a book to students about an individual's transgender journey. What you've seen under President Trump is giving more power back to the states to make decisions on how to educate our kids. And I think Texas right now is taking full advantage of that. You've seen President Trump say that he wants to eliminate the Department of Education out of Washington, D.C., give more freedom back to the states when it comes to education. But look, at the end of the day, you just got to look at the facts, and the facts are religion, Christianity, God were central to the founding of our country. I do not believe that this is going to fuel anti-Semitic activity. I believe the rhetoric out of many Democrats. I think the fact that you had Democrats, over 100 members of Congress, who voted against just recently aid to Israel, those are the kind of things that many would argue fuels anti-Semitic behavior in this country. At the end of the day, Texas is doing what Texas thinks is right in this situation, and other states may follow its lead.
Jade, your thoughts?
Well, yeah, 55 out of 56 of the original signers of the Declaration were Christians. And, you can argue, church versus state, but God is referred to 4 times in the Constitution. And, the original state constitutions, 9 out of 13 of them required you to be a Bible-believing Christian to serve in government. And common law comes from the Bible. It's an outgrowth of Scripture, which is the presumption of innocence, due process, and jury of your peers. So I think it is really important to understand the Bible, especially in America, of all places.
Elliot, there's probably been this probably hasn't been as hot a political debate in the United Kingdom as it has been in the United States over the years. At the same time, you have many people are concerned about the decline of organised Christianity in this country. Do you think this is something that should be encouraged in the United Kingdom?
Listen, I actually very much support this, and to sort of take the ideology out of it, I can see there could be problems with exactly how it's taught, but from a purely kind of educational standpoint, there are so many values and so many principles that in the West we consider universal, but in human history very much aren't universal. And David versus Goliath is such a fantastic one, right? David versus Goliath, the idea of there being something about the underdog that is particularly valuable, almost sacred, particularly heroic, and that's not something that has always been the case in history. That is not how the Spartans would have viewed things. They wouldn't have celebrated David. And of course, absolutely core to Western civilization, all of our culture, all of our outlooks, is that love of the David, the love of the underdog defeating the great power. And I mean, listen, that's embedded in things like the idea of the American dream, the idea that you can pull yourself up by your bootstraps, you can start from nothing and make something of yourself. And so many of these principles are not actually universal values, and it is worth in our education teaching children exactly where these underlying principles come from. So listen, I actually think it's quite a good idea, even if I'm not personally identify as particularly religious or believing in God or anything.
Stuart, I went to a Church of England school in Australia. I didn't go through the UK schooling system. My understanding is that religious education is compulsory for all state schools to provide, but it sits outside of the compulsory curriculum, and it does have to provide a balanced view of different religions. Do you think that, given that this was, the church of this country or the king, at least technically still should be the defender of the faith, even if that may not be what his view is proving to be, do you think that there should be more of a focus on the teaching of the Christian faith in British schools?
Well, I think the king is now defender of the faiths.
Yes, that's sadly what I was getting at.
But I went to a Church of England school and I learnt the Bible and I got a balanced view of it. But I think in this case what we're looking at is, what we need to hear from is the Jews in Texas who have concerns about this. And I think this is very important. The comments we've had on the panel are quite accurate. A lot of Western societies are based upon the theology and ideology of the Christian faith and the Bible. And Jews and Christians have a lot in common, mainly because most of those people in the stories in the Bible, those people are Jews. Exactly. Yeah. So I think we need to really bear that in mind. But I just want to talk to you about something about the Church of England. I went to an Easter service with my partner, who is Jewish. And in the very early part of that service, the vicar read a sermon, and in that sermon he said they lived in the land of Israel with the Jews, and it was he that killed him. It was they that killed him. So I think what we need to be careful is the interpretation and the manner in which the Bible is being taught and about how the Jews are framed. The Pope has very clearly stated that it was not the Jews that killed Christ, and I can understand where there are concerns about people taking interpretations into their own hands. But broadly speaking, I think if that's done responsibly, teaching stories from the Bible in countries where, Christianity has been a large contributor to society is a perfectly safe and reasonable thing to do, as long as, children are able to fostered to be able to bring up their own viewpoints on that. So I think the most important thing is we do listen to the concerns of the Jewish community, and we don't do anything that can inflame the worldwide spread of anti-Semitism at the moment.
I'd note that even in absence of compulsory teaching of the Christian faith in British schools, there has been an uptick in, or I would say a small but noticeable resurgence in Christianity amongst young people in America and in the United Kingdom. I think it is somewhat overstated in some corners, but it's certainly there as younger people try and find a sense of purpose in religion, and particularly in the Christian faith, and I think that can only be a good thing. Let's take a quick look at some of the other main news in America. Fast food chain Taco Bell is removing lettuce from its menu in some states after investigations found it could be linked to an outbreak of explosive diarrhea caused by a parasite. The decision is said to have been taken out of an abundance of caution following discussions with health officials. President Trump has blamed Canada for wildfire smoke that could impact the World Cup final. White House officials are meeting with FIFA President Gianni Infantino ahead of Sunday's final to discuss the potential health dangers posed by wildfire smoke in the New York and New Jersey areas. And finally, Oscar-winning Irish actress Brenda Fricker, whose decades-long career included an Academy Award-winning performance in the wonderful movie My Left Foot, also starring Daniel Day-Lewis, and a memorable role in Home Alone 2, has died aged 81 following a period of declining health. Still ahead on The Late Show Live, a question which again I suspect I know the answer to, but I'll ask it anyway. Do you fancy Angela Rayner as the next Health Secretary? Plus, still ahead on The Late Show Live, everybody's favourite Duchess is back in the headlines, and you won't believe what she's moaning about now. This is The Late Show Live on the People's Channel, GB News.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Another fine day by and large, a little bit less hot than recent days. A pleasant summer's day for most. There is the chance of seeing a shower, but if you're after rain, well, I'm afraid to say that most places won't see any all weekend. The odd shower across the east of England with thicker cloud here. And inland we'll see a bit more cloud today over northern England, Wales, parts of the Midlands, and here again too, one or two isolated but potentially heavy showers could develop. Most places fine and bright with sunny spells. Not as hot across the south, but we still get up to 24, 25 degrees. So still feeling pretty warm in that sunshine. Always a little cooler along some of these North Sea coasts with the breeze coming in, continuing to feed in some cloud at times for Lincolnshire and East Anglia. A greater chance through the late afternoon and evening of the odd shower over South Wales and South West England, but they will be very hit and miss. But if we do see one, could be quite a potent downpour. Most of Northern Ireland, most of Scotland having a pretty pleasant summer's evening with a bit of a brisk northerly breeze across the far north, keeping temperatures a little lower here. Temperatures will dip away quite a bit on Saturday evening, so bear that in mind if you are heading out this evening. It will turn quite fresh quite quickly under largely clear skies. Still a bit of a northerly breeze blowing along the east coast, maybe some thicker cloud heading towards the northwest of Scotland, but generally clear skies, and those temperatures quite a bit lower than they have been over recent nights. Towns and cities in the north dropping down to 10 or 11 Celsius, but rural spots will be well below that, so well down into single figures. Sunday's another fine day by and large. Yes, a fresh start, but then sunny spells for most, a bit more cloud in the east again, one or two showers over northern Scotland perhaps, but generally the wind's light, plenty of sunny spells, and after that coolish start, temperatures in the afternoon for most places getting back into the 20s, mid-20s across the south. Bye for now.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boilers sponsors the weather on GB News.
Here at GB News, we made a promise to tell your stories. And on the 6th of August, we're marking 5 years of doing exactly that.
Celebrate with us by having your say. Join in the debates live on TV and radio.
And meeting your favourite presenters across the country, from Leeds to Aberdeen, from Belfast to Barry Island.
Plus, join me in Essex for our biggest live show of the year. Scan the QR code or visit gbnews.com/celebrate. Terms and conditions apply.
Welcome back to The Late Show Live. Well, it is my unfortunate duty to report that Meghan Markle is back in the headlines, this time following claims that she felt a great deal of sadness about missing public engagements in the UK alongside Prince Harry amid the couple's long-running dispute over security arrangements. The reports come after King Charles was reunited with his grandchildren for the first time in 4 years, having hosted Prince Harry, Meghan and their children at his country residence. With me now, showbiz reporter Nelson Aspen. Nelson, great to see you. How much of this from Meghan is a legitimate concern about her security, and how much of this is just an excuse because she doesn't want to go back to Britain?
Good to see you, mate. And yes, I'm sure Meghan is very sad that she missed out on the public engagements, because with public engagements come cameras. So I'm sure she is very sad that she missed out on the opportunity to be photographed on her triumphant return to the United Kingdom. However, she said she would let Harry lead the way, and she was very supportive of him. And I think it's wonderful that your king somehow managed to wait them out and play them like a fiddle, because Harry and Meghan desperately need reinvention. They are feeling outcast and rejected by America. It has been, 6 years? And I think Harry is trying to find a way to get back in the good graces. And this was an opportunity, even if it was just an hour of tea with the King and the Queen.
Yeah, it's interesting you say they both require reinvention. It feels like every single time I see them in the media, there is some sort of attempt at reinvention. You know, it's jams, then it's a rubbish podcast, then it's, you know, any number of these sorts of particular projects. None of them seem to go anywhere because neither of them have a great deal of talent. But where do they go from here? Because, again, it's just failure after failure, with maybe the Invictus Games as a small exception. Where to next?
Well, I would agree with you, except for the fact that even with the Invictus Games, they're having serious financial difficulties. There is even a petition to remove Prince Harry from his role with the Invictus Games. It's garnered over 2,600 signatures so far. So he definitely needs a parachute. And banking on Hollywood may have seemed like a great idea 6 years ago, but it's not working out so well now, especially when their A-list friends in Montecito, California, don't want to be seen with them. It's rather toxic to be seen with them in a celebrity point of view. Invictus is different. Of course, his lineage still is there, will always be there. So he is wise to use that as a backup plan. And I think he's seriously looking at it. And you could argue that this visit was a success because the King and Queen were very gracious to host them and see them, but they also were very canny about not allowing photographs, although I'm sure there were some taken, and they will be released when the King and Queen decide they will be released. But it was all very strategic on everyone's role, a giant game of chess.
And of course, Harry had that crushing defeat in court against the Daily Mail recently. How does that impact the couple going forward in your eyes?
Well, he has become adept at playing a victim from his autobiography Spare until this latest setback. And you have to, that's life, isn't it, after all? You have to turn setbacks into a positive. And Harry's getting increasingly good at that.
Yeah, sadly he is, and I can't see that changing anytime soon. Nelson, thanks very much for your time.
Thank you.
I'll go to my panel, and I've got to ask the question which I imagine is on the minds of some people, and that is, Elliot, to you first, do you care?
Well, there was this really blissful moment, actually, before I came to the studio today where I think I'd actually forgotten that Meghan Markle existed. And that was a really blissful state to be in, and now unfortunately I've had to remember that she does exist. You know, the shocking thing about those two is that they would trade in this, you know, extraordinary privilege to be part of a royal family going back a millennia just to be two irrelevant, talentless celebrities. But listen, it's their life, not mine.
Stuart, everyone I speak, and whenever I sometimes say, you know, to friends or to my missus, you know, what I'm covering on the show, and I'll mention Meghan Markle and Harry, she'll go, oh, why are you still covering those two grifters? And everyone wants to say that. Everyone wants to say, you know, like, oh, you shouldn't be, no one cares about these people anymore. But, and I'll let you in on a little secret, ladies and gentlemen, I still see the ratings. And you still watch when these people come up. So it seems like there is a dissonance between what people say they feel about these two, but for some reason or another, they still actually capture eyeballs and attention. Why do you think that's the case?
The royal family is something we hold in very high regard. And despite the fact that Harry has left the firm, in the sense, he's still a sort of a distant element of it, and he's been in that sort of circle of focus for quite some time. You can't change that past. Let's look at that. I mean, Invictus Games were mentioned there. You know, regardless of whatever you think of Harry, he did serve his country. He's a veteran. It doesn't matter whether you've done it a day or a lifetime. He did sign that cheque, and he's continued to put that into the Invictus Games, which has helped a lot of veterans. I don't think that's necessarily something it's just for his own personal gratification. I think there is something genuine there. You know, and to be honest, look, I'm pleased His Majesty the King has seen his grandchildren. I'm very pleased for him with that one. Harry is no longer a part of the active royal family, but clearly people still show some interest.
Jade, your thoughts?
Yeah, I forgot she existed for quite a while there too. The only time I hear about her is when I'm listening to Megyn Kelly, because she will, for some reason, bring her up. But it's a classic case of bite the hand that feeds you, and that's what this couple did. And unfortunately, I feel like she dragged Harry down. I feel like Harry was on a pretty good path before meeting her.
Yeah, interesting. Matt, I don't really have a specific question for you. No doubt you probably don't really care. Just say something interesting.
Yeah, I don't care. I don't think many people in the United States care. Look, the kind of rule of thumb here, I think in the United States, is who would you rather have walk down the street by you and get a selfie with? You know, Meghan and Harry, or, you know, David Beckham and the Beckhams. And I think more people would want to stop and get a picture with David Beckham and his wife and his family than Harry and Meghan. I just think this has not been a great look for them. They have not, frankly, hit it off here in the United States in terms of having like a big celebrity impact and integrate into business or Hollywood or into sports. The Beckhams, frankly, have, and I think they're a good example of how to do it. And that's my 2 cents, and something that I really don't care much about.
I think they'd probably prefer to take a selfie with Ben Lee over Prince Harry, wouldn't they? Well, I think that's...
Yeah, there were certainly
People want selfies with Ben Leo, yeah.
Several examples of that when Ben's been doing his Vox Pops throughout the World Cup tournament. And the great man will be back with you tomorrow night on The Late Show Live, ladies and gentlemen, so make sure you look out for that. Let's delve into some of the main stories on the front of tomorrow's newspapers. The Telegraph reports Angela Rayner is being lined up to serve as Andy Burnham's health secretary in what would mark a major political comeback. Rayner resigned as Deputy Labor leader and Housing Secretary last year after failing to pay £40,000 in stamp duty. A former care worker, Rayner is expected to spearhead his £18 billion plan for a national care service. Elliot, I'll start with you. What would you make of Rayner as health minister?
I'm pretty sure that Angela Rayner's cure for almost anything is sort of 5 pints and a cigarette. So I kind of encourage that approach, to be honest. But I mean, listen, she was a disaster at Ministry of Housing, Communities or Local Government. New house building plummeted under her watch, despite it being one of the core manifesto promises to increase house building. So I'd imagine it would be similarly disastrous at health.
Yeah, Stuart, look, there's again, I would say on Angela Rayner, she does the authenticity thing better than most other Labor politicians. You know, she does the whole, you know, I'm working class thing, you know, which Labor, you know, seems to love, despite the fact that they have given up on the working class, at least in my humble opinion. But at the same time, she was a former care worker, so if you're looking at particular portfolios, she may have more experience there than some other Labor MPs. On balance, what do you make of this potential appointment?
I mean, look, yeah, she's a former care worker. I think one of the biggest issues facing our society is our plan for social care. You know, we really do need to bring a resolution to that forward quite quickly. I think Angela Rayner enfranchises a lot of people in her agenda. If you look at the new Workers' Rights Bill, I think that's targeting exactly those kind of people that you think Labour's lost, which is working people and trying to protect their rights in work. Now, no matter what you think of that from which perspective, you know, she championed that, got it through government and brought it into law. So if you want that sort of person with the agenda to bring something forward and achieve it in a ministerial post, I could see that working with Angela Rayner.
Yeah. Stuart, again, there is another thing here, though, at the same time, that if you look at basically Angela Rayner's career trajectory from care work, she dropped out of school at, 16? She went into care work, she joined the union movement, and from that point on, she's pretty much just been... I can't point to demonstrated achievements in her career. She's basically just...
in politics, I disagree.
Well, what's she actually done apart from just getting the next position because of the whole working class, you know?
No, I don't think that's fair at all. You know, look at her life journey.
This is what everyone always says. The life journey is
exactly
some sort of sense of confidence.
I think we completely devalue the fact of anybody on any political side getting elected into Parliament from whatever walk of life you have come into.
This is the precise problem with politics now. That seems to be the entire kind of way that you justify your own existence. But this is Keir Starmer's whole thing. Like, what was my contribution to public life? Well, you know, I saved the Labor Party from extinction, as if that's some great achievement, as if people care. No, what do you actually do? What's your achievements for the country?
Well, first of all, she got elected and she represented her constituents. She then went up several quite serious rungs within the Labour Party and became a minister, you know, despite having left school without any qualifications. And then the thing that she decided to do was to deliver for working people through the Workers' Rights Bill, which she'd championed for a very long time and brought into law. I think that's quite a serious achievement for anybody. You look at other, even Conservative ministers who have brought things in and they've really made change in government. That is not an easy thing to do with the system that we have. And hats off to Angela Rayner for doing that one. So, yeah, I think we devalue things when we say, well, you haven't achieved anything. On what paradigm are you measuring that? She brought something into law and forwarded that and delivered on that agenda which she'd promised people. So, and people have come along with it.
Taking industrial relations back generations, I don't think necessarily is an achievement, but I'll take you though, she did bring that into law. Elliot, I'll give you the final word on this.
I mean, listen, I consider the piece of legislation she's brought in, including Renters' Rights Bill, to be an absolute dog's dinner piece of legislation that is crippling businesses, crippling landlords and making it more difficult to rent. But listen, I suppose that's probably about as good as we're going to get from a Labour minister.
Well, I'll move on because I don't necessarily think DC will have a strong opinion on Angela Rayner. I'll leave the strong opinions to gbnews.com/your say because I know that the GB News faithful do have pretty firm views on Ange. Let's go to the Telegraph, who are reporting that an Albanian burglar fighting deportation has flaunted his wealth by posting an Instagram video of himself feeding wads of cash to his dogs. Take a look.
Hey!
Right.
I don't think that's very nutritious.
As Stuart says, I don't think that's very nutritious. Look, okay, so let me work this through in my mind because that's something you don't necessarily see every day. There's the fact that this is obviously a ridiculous thing to do with a dog, but Matt, there's a more serious point here which I'm going to try and bring out such as I can, and that is this isn't the first time I've seen a video of a migrant who shouldn't be in the country, and it sounds like this man shouldn't be in the country. They basically use social media as a way to laugh at the British people. I see videos that come from migrants in asylum hotels where they're basically showing off, you know, their kind of designer clothes, or they're showing off whatever, you know, latest, you know, freebies been given to them by some, you know, do-gooder NGO. You see Instagram videos or TikTok videos of people literally as they are on boats crossing the channel where it feels like they are laughing at the British people. And this I just find so incredibly infuriating.
Yeah, spot on, Will. And look, they do this because they have no fear or no shame. And this is a lack of leadership, frankly, in the UK. When you have policies where people think they can commit crime, or feel like they can not be deported, or feel like they can do whatever they want and have no consequence, you get these kind of videos. And the real victims here are the people of the UK. Because it was talked about earlier in the segment, but look, the UK cannot afford to have people in the country illegally. You cannot afford to take on the asylum seekers and the things that are taking shape in the UK when it comes to migration or illegal migration in general. And you know, look, in the United States, we've seen videos like this. I've seen some videos of people who have been committing Medicare and Medicaid fraud or fraud in our social programs or health programs here in the United States, and they'll flaunt it on social media. The difference is when they did that under President Biden, I don't think they had much fear. When they do under President Trump, they do, because President Trump will deport them. President Trump has taken the lead on ensuring we secure the border and deport those who are not here legally. And so I just think you got to reform and tighten up your immigration process in the UK. This is just another example of why to do it. If I was a citizen of the UK, I'd be furious about this.
But that is now happening with our new asylum and immigration bill. So they're going to be able to take back money from people who have either abused the system or been here that shouldn't have been, so they can now reclaim money. And they're changing the system so that people have to sponsor migrants here that comes out of their own pocket. So that system is, that reform is already going through.
It's just, Stuart, you've got to understand that this is all just tinkering around the edges. And ultimately, unless you untangle that legal framework, which particularly includes the ECHR, the human rights.
Well, that's exactly what that bill does, Bill. The bill specifically states to make sure we reinterpret Article 8 as immediate family, so we can remove that backstop that would stop flights taking off. But also, it makes sure that there's a one-stop immigration and asylum processing system.
Then why not just get rid of the ECHR altogether?
Because because it provides protections to British citizens as well.
Give me one right that you would lose.
I'll tell you what, I will give you 3 examples of it. First of all, when British Airways stopped a woman wearing a crucifix, it was ECHR legislation that enabled that. The first inquiry into Hillsborough was ECHR legislation that enabled it.
Okay.
The third and final one was when people were having phone taps in the 80s. ECHR legislation prevented it and protected their freedom of speech. So it does do things for British citizens. So we're better trying to, instead of throwing the baby out with the bathwater, actually fixing that issue. Now, if it can't be fixed, we can consider that measure, but we do need to consider it first.
Well, let's consider that as the border is flooded with more and more illegal migrants every day. It's only money for asylum hotels. It's only, you know, kind of petty crime, I suppose. Although I'm sure we know that isn't necessarily the case. Final thoughts, Elliot, to you.
Listen, I mean, I agree with Kemi Badenoch. We should leave the ECHR in its entirety, and we should do it now. I think there is some positive moves being made by Shabana Mahmood, but I think, as he said, well, it is ultimately tinkering around the edges. Ultimately, if you get indefinite leave to remain in this country, they are extending the amount of time it takes to get that. But once you get it, you get access to the full range of benefits, pensions and all the rest of it. And I think that's what needs to be tackled.
Well, we've got a response from the Home Office who have said this individual is a known foreign national offender and we are doing everything in our power to ensure they are removed as soon as possible. While there are ongoing legal proceedings, we cannot comment further. Nearly 10,000 foreign national offenders have been returned under this government. We will continue to do everything we can to remove these criminals from our streets. Well, that's all we have now, time we have now, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much to my panel, and thank you so much, more importantly, to you for spending time with us tonight. Ben Leo will be back tomorrow night on The Late Show Live. Have a lovely evening.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Good morning, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Another fine day, by and large, a little bit less hot than recent days. A pleasant summer's day for most. There is the chance of seeing a shower, but if you're after rain, well, I'm afraid to say that most places won't see any all weekend. The odd shower across the east of England with thicker cloud here, and inland we'll see a bit more cloud today over northern England, Wales, parts of the Midlands, and here again too, one or two isolated, but potentially heavy showers could develop. Most places fine and bright with sunny spells. Not as hot across the south, but we still get up to 24, 25 degrees. So still feeling pretty warm in that sunshine. Always a little cooler along some of these North Sea coasts with the breeze coming in, continuing to feed in some cloud at times for Lincolnshire and East Anglia. A greater chance through the late afternoon and evening of the odd shower over South Wales and South West England, but they will be very hit and miss. But if we do see one, could be quite a potent downpour. Most of Northern Ireland, most of Scotland having a pretty pleasant summer's evening with a bit of a brisk northerly breeze across the far north.